Chapter 1753. The flames dyed the sky above the dueling ground a fiery red. A city in the clouds faintly appeared within the flames. In the center of the city was a huge altar. On each side of the altar stood a flaming angel with 6 pairs of wings and a scepter in hand. One by one, the 2 winged angels emerged from the altar with weapons in their hands. After these 2 winged angels appeared, they arranged themselves in an orderly formation in the sky. More than 70 winged flaming angels appeared with weapons in their hands. 2 war chariots made of flames appeared on the altar. The 2 6-winged angels leaped onto the war chariots. Like a commander, he stood in front of the 76 winged flaming angels. At that moment, Zhongzhe used another ability of the Heaven's Crimson Fire, Heaven's Adjudication. With Heaven's Adjudication, the burning effect of each flaming angel's attack could not be blocked. Furthermore, the attack had a serious injury effect that would reduce the target's recovery. This ability was used in conjunction with the Heaven's Crimson Fire's first ability, Scarlet Country of Heaven. It replenished the flaming angels' attack power. Their overall strength had undergone a huge increase. Zhongheng did not stop after using the 2 abilities of the Heaven's Crimson Fire. Zhongzhe continued to exert strength and ordered the Burning Sky Scorching Centipede to use its exclusive skill, Fire Fantasy Country. In an instant, the entire space was filled with fire elements. The entire ground was covered with bricks and tiles made of flames. These bricks and tiles formed by the flames formed a domain. Within the domain, the fire damage effects would constantly stack. After using Fire Fantasy Country, the Burning Sky Scorching Centipede received a huge boost. Lu Yifan had just summoned the Yin-Yang 2 modes Ox and the 4 symbols 8 trigrams Go to assist him. While helping him resist the Calamity Phaseless Beast, Lu Yifan ordered the Peach Sky Blue Bird, which had been supporting the insect swarm and dragging Qianyu, to use Elite Guard's return. After receiving Lu Yifan's command, the Peach Sky Blue Bird let out a sorrowful cry. The peach tree let out a sorrowful cry. Half of the peach fruits on the peach tree that had just borne withered in an instant. They turned into dregs and fell to the ground. This was because the Peach Sky Blue Bird had absorbed the energy within the peach fruits. The reason why the Heavenly Peach Green Bird could summon the Jing Guard was because it had absorbed the Jing Guard's soul. The more energy the Heavenly Peach Green Bird used, the stronger the Elite Guard would be after it used its skill. At this moment, the Peach Sky Green Bird was already doing its best to ensure the strength of the Elite Guard that was summoned. Lu Yifan knew very well what Zhongzhe's attack represented. If Zhongzhe's attack succeeded, the other side would lose one of their members. It would be much easier for him to destroy the 3 sacred source life forms. If Zhongzhe didn't succeed and used up all the spiritual power in his body, he wouldn't be able to escape. Even with Gao Feng's help, his combat power would definitely not be as good as before in a short period of time. Therefore, this attack had to succeed no matter what. Amid the sorrowful cries of the Heavenly Peach Blue Bird, a fiery red bird beast that was about the same size as the Heavenly Peach Blue Bird appeared. He appeared beside the Peach Heavenly Green Bird. After this bird beast appeared, it flew around the Heavenly Peach Blue Bird. Then, raging flames ignited on his body. Fire elements gushed out of this fiery red bird's spirit as if they were free. This red bird was a fire-type Fae, the Elite Guard. This Elite Guard was formed from souls and energy. Before its energy was exhausted, the Elite Guard would not vanish. The Elite Guard flew towards Zhongzhe, and a huge flame shadow appeared behind it. The flame shadow enveloped Zhongzhe, causing the Burning Sky Roar's exclusive skill, Flame Fantasy Country, to instantly ignite a 5-foot-tall flame. Chime had also communicated with the sun. It did its best to fuse the power of the sun into the Flame Fantasy Country. It raised the temperature of the Flame Fantasy Country. As a desolate bloodline Fae, the Burning Sky Roar had many offensive methods. However, Zhongzhe's abilities were useless. After injecting all the spiritual power in his body into the Burning Sky Roar's body, the Burning Sky Roar's legs stomped and pounced at Kaihua. At the same time, the Burning Sky Roar used its exclusive skill, 8 Refinements Exceptional Flames. 8 exceptional flames revolved around the burning sky roar's body. Among these 8 exceptional flames, there were 3 Class 5 exceptional flames. Zhongzhe let the burning sky roar use up 5 high-grade exceptional flames and 2 top-grade exceptional flames. He used fire refinement to amplify the red plum cloud fire. The red plum cloud fire, which originally had a red plum blossom phenomenon, was now burning a plum garden. The red plum cloud fire's characteristics were temperature and combustion. These 2 flames' most basic abilities were the foundation of the fire's destructive power. Kai Hua turned pale with fright when he saw the burning sky roar pouncing toward him. Yu Changjian had attacked because of Qian Yu. He was affected by the toxicity and corrosiveness of red thorn's digestive fluid. There was not much spiritual power left in Yu Changjian's body. Yu Changjian was currently replenishing the spiritual power he had expended. This was when the trio's sacred source lifeforms were at their weakest. If it were any other time, Kai Hua wouldn't even dodge if someone attacked him. However, Kai Hua was not sure if Yu Changjian's sacred source lifeform, Gorgong's tooth, could withstand this attack. If it were Yu Changjian or Yanling, they could still merge with the middle-rank devil in their bodies. They could increase their physical attributes. However, Kai Hua had yet to obtain a devil. He could not merge with it even if he wanted to. Kai Hua hurriedly summoned his 3 fays. He allowed his 3 fays to block in front of him. He then looked at Yu Changjian, who was the closest to him, and shouted, "Ah, Jian!" After Kai Hua summoned his 3 main fays, Yanling immediately used algae chain flow on her sacred source life form, the Gorgong clam. It connected Kai Hua's 3 fays together. Then, Yanling gritted her teeth and summoned a strange plant. This plant had many purple flowers growing on it. It looked very beautiful. The most special thing was that there was a huge spherical stamen in the middle of the petals. There were many small thorns on the stamen. Under the illumination of the light, the thorns appeared to be translucent. Yanling shouted, "Purple resentment demon flower, use 1,000 needles spit and exclusive skill, death substitution cling." After receiving Yanling's instructions, the Diamond X/Fantasy V purple resentment demon flower swayed and contracted its petals. It spat out the huge purple stamen at the burning sky roar. Immediately after, the purple resentment demon flower spat out its stamen and tightly bound Kai Hua. As a basic Class 4 creation master, Zhongzhe could not see the abilities and exclusive skills of a myth breed fae. However, a fantasy breed fae's exclusive skill could distinguish 1 or 2. Therefore, Zhongzhe knew the effects of Yanling's purple resentment demon flower, 1,000 needles spit, and death substitution cling. 7017K. Chapter 1754. 1,000 Needles Eruption was an AoE skill that dealt poison and would damage. The purple resentment demonic flower spat out its stamen. The small thorns in the stamen dealt pure wood damage. It has armor penetration, bleeding, and penetration effects. If it hit the target, it would immediately turn the target into a bloody person. If he did not receive treatment in time, he would die from the loss of blood. These seemingly transparent needles would penetrate the fae's fur and enter its body once they were shot. It will instantly suck blood and swell, opening the wound. A hollow tube is used for bloodletting. The blood that flowed out could fuse with the purple pollen in the stamens of the purple resentment demonic flower. This pollen contained a variety of poisons, all of which had a chilling effect on living beings. Han Chi's main fae, the nether bamboo viper, was not like how Lin Yuan had used the source sand grains to accept the spirit. It took a long time for the poison to take effect on the target. The purple resentment demon flower that Yanling summoned was extremely ferocious and had extremely strong offensive capabilities. However, Zongheng did not even let the burning sky roar dodge. First, the heaven-burning roar was strengthened by the endless Sanskrit sound sparrows. The elite guards summoned by the heavenly peach-green bird continued to use the will of the Flame Emperor to increase the damage of the fire element. In addition, the burning sky centipede had used its exclusive skill, Fire Fantasy Country, 3 top-notch heavenly flames and 5 high-grade heavenly flames to enhance itself. At that moment, the burning sky roar had gathered Lu Yifan and Lu Jie's power, and its strength was far beyond that of a fantasy breed. It was strong enough to compete with a peak myth Tu Fei. Therefore, before the wooden spikes could even touch the body of the burning sky centipede, they were burned to ashes by the red plum meteorite fire that enveloped the burning sky centipede. Under the burning of the flames, it was difficult for the stamens to infect the sky-burning serpent. The attack that Yan Ling commanded the purple resentment demonic flower could basically be regarded as ineffective damage. Actually, Yan Ling didn't think that this attack would be of much use. The purpose of Yan Ling's attack was just a feint. She wanted to take this opportunity to see the strength of the burning sky centipede. Yan Ling's most important purpose in summoning the purple resentment demon flower was to let it use its exclusive skill, Death Substitution Cling, to protect Kaihua. The effect of the purple resentment demon flower's exclusive skill, Death Substitution Cling, was to protect one target, immobilizing the target. However, when the other party suffered a fatal attack, he could sacrifice his own life to die in place of the other party. The death of a main Fei would have a huge impact on the spirit chi professionals. Yan Ling was very clear about this. Under normal circumstances, Yan Ling would only use the purple resentment demon flower's exclusive skill, Death Substitution Cling, on herself. But the current situation was beyond Yan Ling's control. After all, this was a life-and-death battle with the Radiance Federation. Even if Yan Ling did not have much of a sense of honor, she was more concerned about herself. But Yan Ling couldn't afford to lose. If they lost, it would be just like what they had said before the match. Qian Yu and Luo might be fine, but the three of them would definitely die. Other than her opponent, Yan Ling was even more afraid of Luo, who had merged with the demon. At this time, Luo had 4 horns on his head, but there were no ghost tattoos on his face. He hadn't completely merged with the Great Devil in his body. All he did was trigger the aura of the Great Devil in his body. Yan Ling had never seen Luo completely fused with the Great Devil. However, he knew which Great Devil Luo had contracted. Once combined, under the influence of the Great Devil's will, Luo would probably go crazy from hunger. If Kaihua died, the trio's joint attack would be broken. Then, she and Yu Changjian would likely become Luo's delicious meal. As for herself and Yu Changjian, they couldn't resist Luo at all because they had contracted a demon. The suppression of a Great Devil on a middle-rank demon was simply too strong. After contracting a demon, their souls had long been affected by the demon. Yan Ling didn't know that when she had commanded the purple resentment demon flower to use its exclusive skill, Death Substitution Cling, Zhongzhe had revealed a smile on his face. From the beginning, Zhongzhe's target was not Kaihua but Yan Ling. After listening to him, Zhongzhe had feigned an attack on Kaihua. He didn't expect to obtain such a huge harvest. At that moment, he had already gone crazy. He commanded the insect swarm to pounce on Qian Yu's main Fei, the Cambrian Pegasus. In order to be considerate of his teammates, Qian Yu had always been fearful when commanding the Cambrian Pegasus. Against this kind of water attribute Fei that relied on a domain to fight, unless his teammates also used water attribute Feis and could cooperate with him. Otherwise, they would be an obstacle. Due to Lu Jie's earlier command of the Insect Queen, he had produced a large batch of plasma caterpillars and lightning-gathering moths. The plasma caterpillars spat out plasma, while the lightning-gathering moths gathered the plasma in their bodies. After a long period of accumulation, the accumulated energy attacks from hundreds of lightning-gathering moths caused the sea of flowers to tremble. Lu Jia immediately hit the Cambrian Pegasus with the attacks that these plasma caterpillars and lightning-gathering moths had accumulated for 15 minutes. It actually created a gap in the Cambrian Pegasus' shield skin. Immediately after, the blade worms were in front, and the flesh-mincing blade insects were behind. The hidden ladybug soared into the air and was ready to use its body to block any attack that might fly over at any time. At that moment, the sea of insects had completely moved. Under Lu Jie's command, all the insects were not afraid of death. Although Lu Jie had recalled the wasteland ruin insects, the wasteland and the mycelial tapeworms were still there. The seriously injured insects relied on the wasteland to replenish their energy and continue to attack. The dead insects would immediately be possessed by the mycelial tapeworms and launch successive attacks. Facing the countless insect swarms, Qian Yu might not be helpless. However, it gave Qian Yu a terrifying feeling. If the youth from the Radiance faction controlling the insect queen was an A-rank spirit chi professional, the strength of this insect swarm would probably have a qualitative leap. By then, would he still be able to deal with it like he was now? He noticed that Zhong Zhe was attacking Kaihua. Qian Yu, who was trapped by Lu Jie, wanted to summon another Fei to help. However, he did not expect a cold light to slash at him from within the insect swarm. Immediately after, a giant conger eel that was over 400 meters long appeared in front of Qian Yu. The conger eel's long tail swung forward and hit the orchid petal blade centipede that the dead soul nightmare worm was residing in. The orchid petal blade centipede was smashed into meat paste. As for the dead soul nightmare worm, when the orchid petal blade centipede was smashed into meat paste, it had already used the soul-attaching death seed and went into hiding again. It was Lu Jie's sudden attack that made Qian Yu want to help Kaihua summon the Fei. Qian Yu started to defend himself. At that moment, without giving the Freedom Federation's 5 members any time to react, the fiery rock sandworm, which had been tortured by the insect queen, finally closed its eyes and fell into a deep sleep in the crevice under the sand. Immediately after, a volcano suddenly burst open under the feet of Yan Ling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian. 7017 K. Chapter 1755. The huge crater had a diameter of 30 meters. In fact, the moment the crater appeared, Yan Ling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian had the chance to escape with their Feis. No matter how fast the fiery rock sandworm could release energy, it would take more than 10 seconds. To change the terrain, connect the mantle, and form a volcano, it would take more than 10 seconds. However, Kaihua had been hit by Yan Ling's purple resentment demon flower's exclusive skill, death substitution. Yan Ling was unable to forcefully undo the skill, or Kaihua was hit by a powerful blow and had the purple resentment demon flower die in his place. The purple resentment demon flower's exclusive skill, death substitution, was very difficult to undo. Yan Ling did not have any good ideas. The exclusive skill was not as simple as just entangling the target. The purple resentment demon flower had to mobilize the energy in its body to form a protective layer on the target. It was easy to form the protective layer, but it was not so easy to remove it. Yan Ling and Yu Changjian could not leave Kaihua behind. Yan Ling and Yu Changjian could not leave Kaihua behind. If something happened to Kaihua, the 3 sacred source lifeforms would break. The combination of 3 sacred source lifeforms was broken. Even if he won in the end, he would lose his future. Hence, Yan Ling and Yu Changjian accompanied Kaihua and stood within the range of the crater. They did not escape. Yan Ling's sacred source life form, the Gorgon muscle, had a limit to its algae chain flow ability. Once it exceeded 100 meters, the algae chain flow ability would weaken. Because the crater of the volcano was in the sand, the fine sand was easier to smelt than the earth and rocks. Moreover, the fiery rock sandworm was at Diamond X/Legend. Lu Jie had never used a fiery rock sandworm before, so he could only estimate its strength. The fiery rock sandworm had given him a huge surprise. The crater was 300 meters wide. From the size of the crater, one could tell how much fire elemental energy the eruption would provide for Zhong Zhe. Logically speaking, before the duel, both sides were restricted from attacking Yu Changjian and Gao Feng. The crater had included Yu Changjian, so it was against the rules. However, there was a prerequisite to this restriction. That was to determine whether Gao Feng and Yu Changjian had the ability to escape from the range of the attack when faced with an area of effect attack. If there was, then the area of effect attack was not against the rules. This was also why Qian Yu had commanded the Cambrian pierfish to attack Lu Yifen's group of 5. Yan Ling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian did not know how the volcanic crater beneath their feet formed. I thought it was the ability of one of Zhong Zhe's Feis. According to the information he had, only Zhongzai's Fays were all fire-type, and his sacred source lifeforms were all fire-type. The Diamond X/Legend Insect-type Carcinoma Fey, Fire Rock Sandworm, revealed its destructive side. A stream of black and gray gas spewed out from the crater. Just this breath of air was enough to cause Yu Changjian's sacred source lifeform, Gorgon's Tooth, to crack twice. Yu Changjian's face was filled with shock. In fact, the gas spewing out of the crater was not ordinary steam. Instead, under the calcination of the sand, a portion of it was sublimated into gas and sprayed out first. The temperature of the gas was almost the same as the temperature of the lava. After spitting out the gas, the fire rock sandworm, which had not slept for a long time, happily slept and released more and more energy. Lava spewed out of the crater violently, putting immense pressure on Yu Changjian. The spiritual power in Yu Changjian's body was already depleted. As the Gorgon's Tooth continued to crack and reform, Yu Changjian felt the spiritual power in his body drop and shouted to Yanling and Kaihua. "We have to think of a way to leave the range of this volcano. Qianyu, Luo, what are you two doing? Come and help the three of us." Luo frowned because she realized that the phaseless beast had entered Black's body and was in a stalemate with it. This situation made Luo secretly apprehensive. The phaseless beast was a suzerain X/Myth-I Fey. Black was only a B-rank spirit chi professional. Its mind, spirit, and soul should not be able to contend with the phaseless beast. With the phaseless beast's abilities, Calamity Words, Calamity Heart, and deepened the curse mark, Black should have already lost its mind and soul. Black should have long been seized and become the target of the phaseless beast's control. Luo's mind was on the phaseless beast and was constantly injecting spiritual power into it. She had no time to be distracted. Qianyu summoned his other main Fey, the Deep Freeze King Eel. He wanted to help Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian. Qianyu's Deep Freeze King Eel was an extremely powerful aquatic Fey. Originally, there were a total of 12 races in the sea region that were competing for the 8 clans of the Sea Empire. The Deep Freeze King Eel was one of them. Upon hearing Yu Changjian's request for help, Qianyu wanted to let the Deep Freeze King Eel go and help. Unexpectedly, Lu Jie seemed to have gone crazy. He let those plasma moths carry the lightning-gathering caterpillars and fly over to him. Qianyu was preparing to let the Cambrian Pegasus open up a small area of the sea region. He wanted to kill these insects that were sending themselves to death. However, he did not expect Lu Jie to decisively use the Insect Queen's exclusive skills, Insect Swarm Frenzy and Blast Recovery. The plasma caterpillars carried by the lightning-gathering moths were like bombs. Under the explosion from the inside out, it was a little strenuous for the Cambrian Pegasus to hold on. After all, when Lu Jie had produced this batch of lightning-gathering moths and plasma caterpillars, he had set them at Diamond X/Fantasy I. The self-destruction of hundreds of Diamond/Fantasy breed Fays would also cause damage to Myth breed Fays. Therefore, when he saw those hidden armor ladybugs, flesh-mincing blade insects, and hurricane owlet moths rushing toward him without any regard for their lives. The insects that had obtained the frenzy effect released an energy from the inside out. Qianyu knew that this insect swarm was preparing to collectively self-destruct. Qianyu was a little flustered. Let alone a Myth 2 Fey, even a Myth 3 Fey would find it hard not to suffer serious injuries from the self-destruction of hundreds of thousands of insects. However, Qianyu could not dodge. This was because Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian were behind him. Qianyu was not sure if Zhongzai's attack could injure Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian. However, if this insect swarm exploded on Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian, at least 2 out of the 3 would die. Qianyu had no choice but to let the Deep Frost King Eel use extreme cold to freeze the water area opened up by the Cambrian Pegasus. It was used to block these alien insects. However, Qianyu did not know. The insects above the sea of sand were not all. There were more insects below the sea of sand. After Black was controlled by Luo's phaseless beast, Qianyu relaxed his vigilance against the sea of sand under his feet. 7017 K. Chapter 1756. But now, the alien insects under the sea of sand had dug out a huge sand cave. The entire block of ice sank into the bottom of the sea of sand. Then, a series of explosions sounded under the sea of sand. Lu Jia used Blast Recycle to recover his spiritual energy. The dimensional light crocodile's abdomen sprayed out a large number of insects again. However, the insects that were sprayed out this time were mainly escape ladybugs and hurricane owlet moths. It was obvious that after this strike, Yi Chen's expression changed drastically. Lu Jia had to switch from an offensive position to a support position. It was all thanks to Gao Feng's help that Lu Jia was able to make the sea of insects grow to such a scale. Lin Yuan had told Gao Feng not to be stingy with his spiritual power. Gao Feng had almost squeezed out all the spiritual power in his body for Lu Jie. The flowers of the two spirit spring lilies and the breeze hibiscus showed signs of withering under extreme overdraft. During the Radiance 100 sequences test, the Radiance 100 sequence would not be able to survive. Gao Feng could single-handedly lead an army of 10,000 people. It was the massive amount of spiritual energy and the protein that Lu Jie had the insect queen continuously replenish. Only then did he set up this sea of insects that was hard to replicate. This attack was the limit of Lu Jie's control over the swarm. It would be fine if Lu Jie didn't know about the phaseless beast's abilities and exclusive skills. Lu Jie, who had learned about the phaseless beast's exclusive skill and ability from Lin Yuan, knew very well what kind of danger Lin Yuan was currently facing. Therefore, Lu Jie unleashed this attack in a fit of rage. Qian Yu was unable to support Kai Hua, Yan Ling, and Yu Changjian. At this moment, Zhong Zai's attack arrived. At this moment, the sky-burning Ho turned around. The attack that was originally aimed at Kai Hua turned to attack Yan Ling. At this moment, Yan Ling immediately knew that the three of them had been deceived. At such a critical moment, Yan Ling didn't have much time to think. He immediately merged with the middle-rank devil in his body. Yan Ling's appearance was quite outstanding, but she was not considered the best among her peers. However, he was definitely at the top. At this moment, Yan Ling's fair skin turned dark green. One after another, dark green vines appeared beneath his feet. Yan Ling suddenly grew taller by a few centimeters. The two pairs of horns on her head were like a pair of wooden thorns, and her eyes were vertical, filled with a bewitching aura. At that moment, Yu Changjian had also merged with the demon in his body. Yu Changjian's originally slender body swelled up as white bone spurs drilled out of his body. They were all over Long Sword's hands and legs. In his mouth, he bared a few sharp teeth and rolled out his lips. Yu Changjian immediately used his ability after merging with the demon. Under the scorching heat of the volcano, Yu Changjian's spiritual power and life force actually increased tremendously. Zhong Zai's eyes narrowed. As expected, it wouldn't be that easy. His opponent was one of the top experts of the Freedom Federation's younger generation, so he would always have an unexpected trump card. The demon had fused with Yu Changjian, but Zhong Zai was unable to determine what kind of creature this demon was. However, he knew that Yu Changjian was performing an ability similar to absorbing damage and converting it into vitality and spiritual power. Zhong Zai saw that the bone spurs on Yu Changjian's arms and legs were continuously falling off. It seemed that Yu Changjian would not be able to use this ability after the bone spikes were used up. But at this time, Yu Changjian's recovered spiritual power was enough to support the casting of the Tooth of Gorgon's ability 7 or 8 times. As for Yan Ling, she was not good at defense. Yan Ling fused with the demon just to increase her defense. Zhong Zai had never thought that this attack would be so easy. Zhong Zai was fighting for a chance to turn the situation around. For this chance, Zhong Zai had given it his all. Zhong Zai injected the last trace of spiritual power in his body into the sacred source life form, the heavenly scarlet fire. Zhong Zai, who had overdrawn his spiritual power, fell to the ground. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. He no longer had the strength to stand up. At this time, the two six-winged angels standing on the carriage raised their staffs and pointed at the city behind them. The entire city began to burn. It turned into 2 red robes made of flames. They draped over the bodies of the 2 six-winged angels. The 2 six-winged angels were like red-robed archbishops. The 2 six-winged angels waved their staffs forward. The 76 two-winged angels behind them absorbed the residual heat of the city. Their weapons were coated with a layer of sunset. The red plum meteoric fire had completely exploded on Yanling's body. It only burned Yanling. Yu Changjian's sacred source life form, the Gorgon's tooth, collapsed and recovered like a building block. Within the flames, the Gorgon's tooth absorbed all the damage and pain. Yanling seemed unaffected. She could not even feel the heat of the flames. But in this magnificent red, she looked at the blossoming plum blossoms in front of her. Yanling had a feeling of enlightenment. It was as if she was about to perish in the flames. The red plum meteorite fire, which had been enhanced by too much and had even absorbed 2 top-notch strange fires, was simply too strong. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The bone spikes on Yu Changjian's arms and calves had all fallen off. Out of the few sharp teeth, only one was left. The red plum meteoric fire was about to be extinguished. However, Yu Changjian could not laugh. The sacred source life form, the heavenly scarlet fire, had arrived. The heavenly scarlet fire had used its ability to release these angels from scarlet flame heaven. It could also be amplified by the volcanic crater and the flame emperor intent that the elite guards constantly released. Yanling used nearly 40 seconds to remove Kai Hua's purple resentment demon flower's exclusive skill, Death Substitution Bind. Yanling did not care that the remaining red plum meteoric fire would burn the purple resentment demon flower, which was a plant fey. She let the purple resentment demon flower pass through the red plum meteoric fire and tightly wrap around her body. Kai Hua gritted his teeth and let his 2 main feys block in front of Yanling. Only one main fey was left to protect him. Just like how Yanling had protected Kai Hua in the past. Kai Hua also had to protect Yanling now. Because this kind of protection was for him. Kai Hua knew very well that if his sacred source life form, the Gorgon silk, could not link with Yanling and Yu Changjian's sacred source life forms, he would not be favored by his holiness. Even if his phase died, as long as the sacred source life form was still around, he would be able to enjoy his original treatment. Moreover, His Holiness the Foolish God had concocted a medicine that could recover a spirit chi professional's spiritual energy from a dead fey. It would allow the spirit chi professional to contract another fey's elixir. This elixir had always been one of the most precious medicines in the Freedom Federation. It was exclusive to His Holiness the Foolish God. Once it was released, it would definitely be fought over by the major families. Kai Hua felt that as long as he won this duel, His Holiness the Foolish God would definitely bestow the elixir. Before Kai Hua could think further, the flaming angels arrived one after another. They had already swung the Heaven's Scarlet Fire's second ability, Heaven's Adjudication's first strike. 7017K. Chapter 1757. Among the insect-type Carcinoma Fae, the Fire Rock Sandworm, the Desolation Bloodline Fae, the Burning Sky Scorching Hose exclusive skill, Fiery Fantasy Town. The elite guards summoned by the Peach Blue Bird kept releasing abilities and were enhanced by the Flame Emperor's intent. The Blazing Angels, which already had the combat power of Myth 2, became even stronger, reaching the standard of Myth 3. Zhongzhe had exhausted all of his spiritual power for these 2 attacks. The Sky-Burning Clam's attack had ended. The Sacred Source Lifeform's Heaven's Scarlet Fire attack would become Zhongzhe's masterpiece in this battle. His spiritual power had been greatly depleted. Zhongzhe would not be able to spare any energy to join the battle in a short period of time. The Blazing Angels slashed at Yanling, who had just emerged from the red plum meteorite fire. One slash left a deep gash on the purple resentment demon flower's body. This gash even exposed Yanling's skin to the air. It was obvious that Yanling's battle armor had been cut open by the slash. Yu Changjian had to make a choice. Yanling was currently using the sacred source life form, the Gorgon clam, to inject life energy into her body. It was to repair the damage caused by the Blazing Angel's attacks. His sacred source life form, the Gorgon tooth, was still suffering from damage. However, without life energy, the Gorgon tooth would not be able to recover once it was broken. Yu Changjian had to make a choice between his sacred source life form and Yanling's. Should he abandon his sacred source life form and do his best to protect Yanling? Or should he ensure that his sacred source life form did not die? The blazing angels did not give Yu Changjian any time to make a decision. Each of the blazing angels' attacks carried the sacred source lifeform's Heaven's Scarlet Fire's ability, Heaven's Adjudication. Each attack had an armor-piercing and scorching effect. Yanling, who was being held by the purple resentment demon flower, finally let out a groan after a series of attacks. This was not because Yanling's body was injured and could not withstand the attacks. It was because the purple resentment demon flower had been cut into pieces by the blazing angels' sharp swords. Yanling's mind had been severely damaged after her own fae died. Yanling had fused with the demons and was covered in vines. Her body was burning under the blazing angels' attacks. Yanling tried her best to hold on, but at this time, the two six-winged angels on the war chariots were already charging towards Yanling with scepters in hand. The six-winged flaming angel brandished the two scepters and released a dazzling scarlet flame. When the flame landed on Yanling's body was instantly carbonized. At this moment, Zhongzhe felt a chill and a fishy smell coming from underground amidst the continuous explosions of the swarm of insects. Zhongzhe immediately knew that Qianyu, who had fallen into Lu Jie's trap, was about to emerge from the ground. After Qianyu came out, he would immediately rush to Yanling's aid. He had to kill Yanling within 3 seconds. Zhongzhe gritted his teeth and channeled the spirit qi that Gao Feng had just recovered into the Crimson Heaven Fire. Then, all of the two-winged angels and six-winged angels launched suicidal attacks. Half of Yanling's charred body was burned by the sharp swords and flames. In Yanling's remaining body, there was clearly a living being that was desperately resisting. This creature was the middle devil that Yanling had contracted. Yanling, who only had half of her body left, did not have the second ability of Gorgon's tooth, Gift of Tooth, performed by Yu Changjian. In order to save Yanling just now, the tooth of Gorgon had suffered heavy damage. Yu Changjian did not have much spiritual power left in his body. Yanling was already dead. Zhongzhe's sneak attack was a success. Zhongzhe commanded the remaining 7 or 8 flaming angels to attack Kai Hua when the flaming angels weren't used up. At this moment, the water covered the ground. This cold water instantly extinguished the huge volcanic crater formed by the fire rock sandworm's slumber. Lu Jie sensed it through his insect queen. All the insects underground, including mycelium tapeworms and fire rock sandworms, had lost their lives. Lu Jie's pupils constricted. Hui Yao only had one insect-type carcinoma fei, the fire rock sandworm. If it was gone, so be it. Fortunately, he still had a spirit guard with mycelium tapeworms in reserve. Lu Jie's current fighting style relied heavily on the mycelium tapeworms. The mycelium tapeworms had become an important part of the insect swarm's endurance. The mycelium tapeworms were an insect-type carcinoma fei. To a certain extent, it could double the size of the insect swarm. Without the mycelium tapeworms, Lu Jie would definitely be affected in the future. At this moment, Zhou Ming, who had left Night Leaning Moon 10 minutes ago, returned. He spoke to Night Leaning Moon with a grave expression. "Chief Guard, I just received a report from the guard envoy on duty in the land of spirit suppression. The 2 parasitic rot-flying locusts that have been housed in the land of spirit suppression have died for no reason. The bodies of these 2 parasitic rot-flying locusts are unharmed, but their souls have disappeared." Night Leaning Moon's brows furrowed. She recalled that Luo had used race judgment not long ago. This attack had completely annihilated the insect swarm produced by the parasitic rot-flying locusts. However, the 2 parasitic rot-flying locusts in the land of spirit suppression had also died. Based on this, the race judgment ability was targeted at a certain fei. It was not a species birthed by a certain fei. If there had been other parasitic rot-flying locusts in the world, they would have been wiped out by this race judgment. Even though Night Leaning Moon was Her Majesty Radiance and had reached the Eternal Realm, she had never heard of such an ability. She had never heard of it before. No one cared about what had happened to Night Leaning Moon. Everyone's attention was focused on the battle between the two sides. Li Su's expression had completely darkened. Yan Ling was dead, and she was the core of the sacred source lifeform's connection with Kai Hua and Yu Changjian. The Mirror God had high hopes for the sacred source lifeform's connection. It would be difficult for him to explain himself to the Mirror God when he returned to the Freedom Federation. He had lost one member on his side. Without Yan Ling, Kai Hua and Yu Changjian, who had used up most of their spiritual power, did not have much fighting power left. Kai Hua's two Fays had also died protecting Yan Ling. Li Su was most dissatisfied with Qian Yu. Li Su had always felt that Black was a threat. Luo had urged the phaseless beast to attack Black, but Black had been in a deadlock with the phaseless beast for such a long time. Even Luo had needed to constantly inject spiritual power into the phaseless beast's body. This was enough to show how powerful Black was. Luo, who had been in a deadlock with Black, had done something proper. But what was Qian Yu doing? Radiance envoy Lu Yifan, who was leading the Radiance team, had been assisting the team since the beginning. But what about Qian Yu? He had used the Cambrian Pierfish to fight, and not only had he not harmed the enemy, but he had also used up a lot of spiritual power. Instead, he had used up a lot of Yu Changjian's spiritual power. Chapter 1758. If Yu Changjian had enough spiritual power, he and Yan Ling would have fused with the demons. How could he not have survived? If Qian Yu's caretaker was not Goddess Lian, even if they won this battle by a fluke, Li Xian would definitely settle the score with Qian Yu. According to the current situation, his plan to come to the Radiance Federation would not be able to come true. There was no change of expression on Goddess Lian's face. It was as though the person who had died was not a prodigy of the Freedom Federation. From the start of the battle, Goddess Lian's cold gaze had been fixed on Qian Yu. It was as though she was worried that Qian Yu would use the mermaid royal bloodline in the hidden sea songstress. All the spectators on the Star Web burst out with intense cheers. In a post on Star Web, someone had already explained the sacred source lifeforms. This explained the terrifying abilities of the three sacred source lifeforms and the connection between them. This made the viewers on Star Web very worried. Now that one of the opposing team members had been killed, the three sacred source lifeforms connection had been broken. There was nothing better than this. Before this team battle, Lu Shuang tried to analyze the situation of the battle. However, when the battle started, Lu Shuang, who was not a creation master, did not know what to say. Secondly, this battle had subverted Lu Shuang's understanding. Lu Shuang had been muted in the livestream room. However, the audience in the livestream room was cheering excitedly. Cultivation is going against the heavens, Lord Zhongzhe is so cool. These two attacks instantly killed the opposing team. If Lord Zhongzhe can make a few more of these attacks, there will be no suspense in this battle. Good night is like, what are the people above saying? Can't you tell? In order to make these two attacks, Lord Zhongzhe could not even stand up. These two attacks were Lord Zhongzhe risking his life to make a way out for the team. Love you 3,000 times, Lord Zhongzhe was able to make these attacks not only because of his own efforts, but also because of Lord Black, Lord Lu Yifan, and Lord Lu Jie's support. Ruthless time, the more I watch this battle, the more worried I am. When will this battle be over? I really hope that our Radiance's 5 heroes can go up and come down in good health. However, the excitement on Star Web had yet to be vented. The purplish-black seawater that spread out from the sand caused everyone to hold their breaths. Suddenly, something in the water seemed to entangle the sky-burning sea serpent. The thing tossed the sky-burning hoe into the sky. Then, a purplish-black wave hit the sky-burning sea centipede. This wave was like a sharp knife, instantly splitting the burning sky centipede's body into 2 halves, leaving only a little bit of fur connecting it. Upon seeing that its main Fae, the burning sky centipede, was in a state of near death, the burning sky centipede's eyes widened. If not for the fact that the burning heaven roar was a desolate bloodline spiritual being with an extremely strong life force, it would have died. That strike had probably killed the heaven-burning sea centipede. However, such injuries were already very difficult to treat. However, even though Zhongzhe was sad and sorrowful, he did not lose his composure. Because at this moment, Gao Feng had revealed his hidden trump card. Gao Feng used the Yellow Spring Lily's exclusive skill. The Yellow Spring Lily was on the verge of death, while the Burning Sky Roar had recovered to its peak state. Lin Yuan, who was in a stalemate with Lu O, felt the rising purplish-black seawaters killing intent toward Lin Yuan. The lotus leaf bloomed again. Lu Jia pulled up Zhongzhe, who had fallen to the ground, and hurriedly leaned toward Lin Yuan. The energy in the purplish-black seawater was quickly absorbed by the lotus leaf. This time, a total of 5 lotus flowers grew on the lotus leaf. As the 5th lotus flower bloomed faintly, the water element energy in the purplish-black seawater was completely absorbed. During this period, countless waves and all kinds of attacks hit the lotus flower beside Lin Yuan. However, as long as these attacks were of the water element, they would become nutrients for the blue lotus flower when they hit the body. Qian Yu's angry attack was restrained again. This kind of restraint was a dimensional reduction attack. Qian Yu had no way to deal with it. At this moment, Qian Yu, whose appearance had changed greatly, stood between the Cambrian Pegasus and the deep freeze king eel. In the middle of his black eyes, there was a silver vertical pupil. It was full of rage. Qian Yu, whose body was covered with purple scales, looked very coquettish. On Qian Yu's face, there were demonic patterns that did not appear when Yan Ling and Yu Changjian merged with the devil. Qian Yu's devil might be a middle-rank devil. But it was not far from a great devil. Since he could not use the water element to attack, Qian Yu planned to use other attack methods to start a massacre. Lu Yifan's phase did not seem to have suffered any damage. However, Qian Yu, who had been assisting the insect swarm in the battle, had been constantly using the heavenly peach-green bird's elite guard return. This had caused the spiritual power in Lu Yifan's body to be depleted. Lu Yifan was no longer of much use at this moment. Kai Hua and Yu Changjian came to Qian Yu's side with gloomy expressions. They summoned their phase and were ready to fight to the death. Kai Hua and Yu Changjian knew about Yan Ling's death. They had to win this battle, and it had to be a beautiful one. Otherwise, even if they did not die in this battle, they might not be able to survive after returning to the Freedom Federation. Although Yan Ling was dead, Zhongzhe no longer had the ability to fight. Lin Yuan and Lu O were in a deadlock. In the team, there was only one spirit chi professional with pure support and defense. As the only main attacker, Lu Jia knew that he had to step forward. Lu Jia knew Lin Yuan's intention to protect Hui Yao. For Hui Yao, Lin Yuan was willing to risk his life. However, Lu Jia didn't mind risking his future or even his life to unleash his sacred source life form. Originally, the insect queen had been hiding in the dimensional light moth's stomach. Lu Jia waved his hand at the dimensional light moth, and the insect queen, a fairy source-type life form, flapped its 3 pairs of wings. It flew out of the belly of the dimensional light moth. The appearance of a 6-winged fairy that was not even at the level of a myth breed made Goddess Lian raise her brows in surprise. His gaze subconsciously shifted from Qian Yu to the insect queen. It was as if he had seen an interesting collection. Lu Jia took a deep look at Lin Yuan. He then said to the insect queen, "Cici, sorry." Upon hearing Lu Jia's words, the insect queen hugged him tightly. She gently kissed Lu Jia on the cheek. Just as Kai Hua, Yu Changjian, and the transformed Qian Yu attacked, Lu Jia's body suddenly emitted a dazzling silver light. Lu Jia's eyes, skin, and hair also turned bright silver in an instant. An indescribable aura came from Lu Jia's body. On the spectator stand, Night Leaning Moon could not help but close her eyes when she saw Lu Jia. Chapter 1759. As Lu Jia's master, Night Leaning Moon had been the one to guide Lu Jia on the sacred source life form. Night Leaning Moon was not as concerned about privacy as the Moon Empress, and Lu Jia was not like Lin Yuan, who could enhance his own phase and sacred source life forms. Hence, when the sacred source life form let out its first cry, Lu Jia's soul essence merged with the sacred source life form. Night Leaning Moon knew the abilities and functions of Lu Jia's sacred source life form. In order to find a sacred source life form that could match Lu Jia, Night Leaning Moon had specially gathered all the sacred source life forms from the Class 5 alien insect dimensional rift. An uncontracted sacred source life form was covered in rainbow light. Even a Class 5 creation master would not be able to see through the rainbow glow on the sacred source life form surface. However, the more sacred source life forms they collected, the more they discovered that the intensity of the rainbow light on the surface of the sacred source life forms varied. Through experiments, sacred source life forms with a higher concentration of rainbow light on their surface tended to have more special and powerful functions. Night Leaning Moon had indeed thought of finding an inheritance for herself because the Moon Empress had accepted Lin Yuan as her disciple. But after taking Lu Jia as her disciple, Night Leaning Moon felt a sense of responsibility and mission. At that time, Night Leaning Moon suddenly understood. Why would the Moon Empress treat Lin Yuan so well? Why would the Moon Empress, who was indifferent even when she was injured, be so distressed when she saw Lin Yuan injured? After taking Lu Jia in as her disciple, Night Leaning Moon wanted to give him the best thing she had. In the past century, Radiance had collected a total of 17 sacred source life forms from the Class 5 alien insect dimensional rift. Among the 17 sacred source life forms, there was an uncontracted sacred source life form that was twice as dense as the rest. Without hesitation, Night Leaning Moon chose the sacred source life form with the densest rainbow light. This was also why Night Leaning Moon had chosen to contract a sacred source life form before Lu Jia could do so. This was the reason why Lu Jia was given so many treasures to protect his soul. Lu Jia's sacred source life form might be powerful, but it was too unique. After using it, both Lu Jia and the insect queen would be affected. If used lightly, it might only change Lu Jia's future and the insect queen's current situation. However, if he were to overuse it, he might die on the battlefield like Yan Ling did. Night Leaning Moon would sacrifice herself for Hui Yao without batting an eye. However, now that he saw his disciple, Lu Jia, was about to abandon his future and even his life for the glory of the Hui Yao Empire, Lu Jia's heart sank. Night Leaning Moon's heart couldn't help but tighten. Night Leaning Moon suddenly felt that she had said something wrong. In fact, Lu Jia could also compete for the Radiance Envoy position. Even Lu Jia's first recognition of himself was still Lin Yuan's retainer. However, Lu Jia's feelings for Hui Yao were no different from before. Upon seeing the silver radiance on Lu Jia's body, the Moon Empress, Chef Supreme, and Bamboo Monarch frowned. He couldn't help but look at Night Leaning Moon, who had her eyes closed. Lian Shen's face showed a look of heartache as if the thing she liked was about to change. The viewers on the star web could not understand Lu Jia's tragic mood when he used the sacred source life form. Instead, he was happy that Lu Jia was preparing to use his trump card and kill move. If it wasn't for the tense situation, the star web netizens would have discussed why Lu Jia apologized to his six-winged demon. In the process of attacking Lu Jia, Qian Yu, as a contractor, did his best to exploit the middle-rank devil he had contracted. This middle-rank devil, which was only one step away from becoming a great devil, caused 2 bumps to appear on Qian Yu's head. However, there were no bumps. Qian Yu's bewitching purple skin was covered with black and blue ghost patterns. Qian Yu's inverted silver eyes were even more bewitching. It was obvious that he had used a series of mental control effects on Lu Jia, such as bewitching, seducing, and depravity. However, Qian Yu quickly realized that something was wrong. He had used the ability of a Myth 2 devil. How could it be resisted by a B-rank spirit chi professional who didn't even have a Myth Fey? Qian Yu couldn't help but frown. Impossible. Lu Jia, who had turned silver, said coldly. Lu Jia, who had already turned silver, said coldly. In this world, nothing is impossible. Being powerful is not only related to one's strength, but also how much one is willing to pay. Speaking of this, Lu Jie looked at his insect queen, elegant beauty, with nostalgia. Lu Jie knew that after this ability was used, elegant beauty would never be in this form again. The insect queen heard Lu Jie's apology again. Her delicate little hand held a strand of her hair and flapped her wings to turn to Lu Jie. A smile appeared on her face, which was used to being shy. It was as if she hoped that Lu Jie could remember her current appearance forever. Lu Jie looked deeply at elegant beauty again. Immediately, Lu Jie's body was covered in silver light, and a silver seed condensed in front of him. On this seed, there were thousands of silver bugs crawling about. This seed seemed to have become a shelter for all the insects. After these insects drilled into the seed, the seed could provide these insects with an absolutely safe shelter. The silver seed was like a pale silver crystal, and it was thousands of times more beautiful than a work of art. When Lu Jie gritted his teeth and threw this artful-like seed to the insect queen, the insect queen opened its arms and hugged the seed. Lu Jie's spiritual power poured into the insect queen's body. The insect queen's body erupted with the same silver light as Lu Jie's. But this time, the power of the silver light was not as weak as the silver light on Lu Jie's body. A silver light pillar that connected heaven and earth stirred up fine silver mist in the air. If not for the fourth stabilizing treasure, the set of mountains and rivers Geoji bells, enveloping this part of the world, that silver glow could probably be seen by all the residents within 100 kilometers of the radiant sacred hall in the royal capital. The silver light spread across the sea of sand that had yet to dry up after being corroded by the purplish-black seawater. Small silver bugs were crawling on the sea of sand. The sea of sand was like a paradise for these silver insects. Behind Li Su and Lian Shen was the ordinary-looking young man with a black candle burning with purple light in his eyes. At this moment, the look in his eyes finally changed. Even Li Su and Lian Shen couldn't hear him, he muttered softly. When a sacred source life form is activated, it doesn't have any function, but it can activate a realm. Don't tell me that in the alien insect dimensional world, there was a stupid ruler who died after reaching the samsara realm. It's just that it's too difficult for a human to form a contract with a sacred source life form of this level. Unless someone can provide it with an endless supply of life energy. Otherwise, the Radiant Sacred Hall will lose a talent, 7017K. Chapter 1760. Looking at the silver light in front of him, Yu Changjian, who was filled with hatred for Hui Yao, was the first to use his ability to contract a devil. Yu Changjian summoned two fays, and while supporting Qian Yu and Kai Hua, he opened his mouth and spat out a white bone spur from his throat. Apart from Lin Yuan, who was still in a deadlock with Lu O, only Zhong Zhe was a creation master. Zhong Zhe used Genius's connected tail to send a voice transmission to Lu Jie. Lu Jie, when the opponent's devil is fused with a spirit chi professional, I can't detect its specific ability. But according to the attacks of the devils when they use their abilities, I can still make some analysis. Once this attack lands on you or the insect queen, Yu Changjian will receive the same spiritual power feedback in your body. It will also allow the target to replenish Yu Changjian's vitality for a period of time while suffering damage. Zhong Zhe was now a basic class 4 creation master, so his analysis would naturally not be wrong. Yu Changjian had initially contracted a low-rank devil. Even though it had been promoted to a middle-rank devil, it still had the foundation of a low-rank devil, so its ability was not strong. However, this function was already very useful for the promotion of low-rank devils to middle-rank devils. For example, after Yan Ling fused with the devil, Vine Fern Dance, this kind of large-scale killing ability. In a battle between experts, it was not very useful. It could only be considered a method to fight above its rank. Lu Jie received Zhong Zhe's message but did not take any action. Just as the bone spur from Yu Changjian's throat was about to penetrate the silver light and land on Lu Jie, amidst the silver light, a hand covered in insect armor stretched out. This hand gently squeezed the white bone spur. Yu Changjian's attack with the ability of a middle-rank devil was completely crushed. Immediately after, a woman about 1.7 meters tall stepped out of the silver light. This woman's body seemed to be filled with the highest technology of the insect civilization. Her body was covered in insect armor, and each piece was the crystallization of the highest technology of an insect fae. The woman's right hand was grabbing a huge long spur. The shape of the long spur was somewhat like the long horn of the legendary alien insect, the monarch halberd beetle. This woman, who had transformed from the insect queen and was covered in insect armor, appeared. Holding the spear in his hand, he charged at Qianyu. Lu Jie's sacred source life form was called the Thousand Insect Emperor Core. It had a special meaning for any insect-type creature. Human experts could be called kings, emperors, sovereigns, and even gods. The title was just a symbol of status, there was nothing special about it. However, for the Zergs, emperor had a special meaning. That was especially true in the subdimension. If the alien insects were lucky enough to become apostles and obtain sacred essence bodies, they would all take the form of women. Of all the alien insect female rulers, not all of them could be called emperors. Of course, Lu Jie and Night Leaning Moon were unaware of all this. Lu Jie's sacred source life form, the 10,000 Insect Emperor Core, was like a form of salvation or protection for insect species phase. However, the price of protection and redemption was that the insect species Fae that had fused with the 10,000 Insect Emperor Core would constantly lose its tenacious vitality. When the vitality was exhausted, the insect species Fae would continue to burn its prized reproductive ability. This meant that after the insect queen fused with the 10,000 Insect Emperor Core, if it did not obtain the support of a large amount of vitality, the insect queen would lose its ability to produce insect swarms. Lu Jie only had one Fae, the insect queen. If the insect queen could not produce insect swarms, Lu Jie would have no other Faes to use. The insect queen's spiritual toxin was secreted by the insect queen's gonads. The loss of reproductive ability would cause the insect queen's gonads to degenerate. From now on, Lu Jie would not be able to use the insect queen's spiritual toxin to control the carcinogen phase. However, Lu Jie still chose to use this attack. When Zhongzhe saw Lu Jie's sacred source life form, his eyes turned blood red. It was the same as the red plum meteorite fire that had burned on Yanling's body. Through his creation master ability, Zhongzhe knew of Lu Jie's sacrifice and predicted Lu Jie's outcome. However, Zhongzhe could not do anything about it. The fusion of the insect queen and the sacred source life form could produce such powerful strength. The speed at which the insect queen burned its vitality had reached a terrifying level. Unless there was a tremendous amount of vitality that could instantly restore the vitality of the entire mountain range into Lu Jie's body. Only then would it be possible to sustain the consumption of the insect queen's life force and prevent it from destroying the insect queen's reproductive ability. However, even the peach sky blue bird, which was an A-rank spirit chi professional and had reached the Great Desolate Realm, could not use its healing ability. It was far from being able to achieve this through Heartless. The peach sky blue bird's Heartless ability allowed it to mercilessly attack a target. The target's peach blossom battle dress and the miniature peach sky blue bird would move away from the target's body. The shield's defensive ability would be converted into vitality with healing effects that would be injected into the target's body. After understanding Lu Jie's situation from Zhongzhe, Lu Yifan made a prompt decision. Lu Yifan made a prompt decision and had the heavenly peach bird cast amorous love on him. The miniature peach sky blue bird flew away, and Lu Yifan received a large amount of spiritual power. Then, Lu Yifan poured all his spiritual power into the peach sky blue bird's body. The peach sky bluebird landed on the insect queen's carapace, which had been formed by the fusion of the sacred source life form. A green peach blossom blossomed beside the insect queen. A large number of peach blossoms fell, and the peach sky bluebird used Heartless again and again. It restored the insect queen's vitality. At the same time, it found an opportunity to use Biting Jade Rock on the insect queen, giving it an invincible effect. It also used Vast Ocean's protection to fight against Qianyu. Qianyu, who was extremely powerful, was hit by a wall. He felt like he was being targeted by a crazy person. However, even if Lu Yifan overdraft his spiritual power, the peach sky blue bird only supported Lu Jie with all its might. The insect queen's vitality lasted for a short 2 minutes, and it was finally about to be exhausted. Although Lin Yuan had been fighting with the phaseless beast, which had already burrowed into his soul, he could not control it. His mind, spirit, and soul were all affected. He could not use Morbius' true data to investigate Lu Jie's sacred source lifeform's ability. However, through Genius Connected Tail, he could sense Lu Yifan, Gao Feng, Zhong Zhe, and Lu Jie's thoughts. Through Zhong Zhe's thoughts, he knew Lu Jie's situation. This made him decide to give it his all. He looked at the situation where he had 2 souls, and one of them could collect faith shrines. Between him and this world-wrecking phaseless beast, who was more powerful? 7017K. Chapter 1761. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly heard Morbius speak to him from the depths of his soul. Lin Yuan, this phaseless beast is a little special, and it happened to burrow into your soul. Only one of your souls has contracted a sacred source life form, and the other soul is still empty. If I use a large amount of my roots to strengthen your soul, we should be able to imprison this phaseless beast. Lin Yuan's heart stirred when he heard Morbius' words. He knew very well that he had been in a stalemate with this phaseless beast, which was called World Calamity Beast, for too long. This phaseless beast's strength had reached Suzerain X/Myth I. Although it had not reached the pinnacle of Myth I, it was not far from it. This phaseless beast, Calamity of the World, had cast the deepened curse seal skill on itself in advance, deepening the curse effect on itself. It had also bewitched a portion of his mind, spirit, and soul power at the same time. Then, it had used the curse words and curse heart to corrode his soul. Lin Yuan, who had consumed the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar and the geocentric jade milk, could already be considered an extremely powerful existence among his peers. Even so, after Morbius used Calm Mind a few times, Lin Yuan still felt that his mind was out of control. It was as though control of his body was about to be taken away. However, Lin Yuan did not immediately counterattack the phaseless beast. This was because Lin Yuan wanted to get rid of the phaseless beast in his body. The phaseless beast's ability, Nation Destiny Steel, and its exclusive skill, Calamity Luck. If it was used on the Radiance's land, it would fundamentally affect the blessings of all living beings living in the Radiance's land. Previously, Lin Yuan did not believe in things like providence and luck. After all, he was a transmigrator. However, one auspicious fay after another slowly changed Lin Yuan's mind. In particular, the top-notch auspicious fay that nested on the cinnabar sweet osmanthus was the blessed swallow. This bird of good fortune had brought great luck to everyone in the return from faraway manor. Therefore, no matter what, Lin Yuan had to fundamentally prevent the phaseless beast from running out of his body. It would use the method of stealing the Radiance's nation destiny and providence to enhance itself. Therefore, even though Lin Yuan's spiritual energy was constantly being attacked by the phaseless beast, he was still able to withstand it. He also did not use Genius's skill, mental expansion, to counterattack the phaseless beast. Lin Yuan lured the phaseless beast into the soul of the uncontracted sacred source life form. He was holding the idea of using the shrine to fight against the phaseless beast that brought calamity to the world. Now, Morbius said that he could strengthen his soul and seal the phaseless beast. Even if he couldn't seal the phaseless beast indefinitely, at the very least, Lu O wouldn't be able to use it again in this battle. As long as he could do this, his goal would be achieved. In fact, Lin Yuan was very curious about fays like the World Calamity Phaseless Beast. The species of the World Calamity Phaseless Beast belonged to the Phaseless Beast family and the Hairy Beast genus. This meant that the World Calamity Phaseless Beast was the same as Genius and Chimey. It was a creature that had evolved from a certain spiritual object. Afterward, Lin Yuan released the phaseless beast from his soul and studied it. It was very likely that they would find the key to cultivating the phaseless beasts that brought disaster to the world. Of course, these were all questions that Lin Yuan had been thinking about. Right now, Lin Yuan didn't have the time to consider these questions. This was because Lin Yuan's thoughts were all on Lu Jie. After the world calamity phaseless beast drilled into Lin Yuan's soul, it once again used disaster heart and disaster words. At the same time, it used seizing mind and soul to prepare to control Lin Yuan. Not only was Lin Yuan anxious, but Luo was also anxious. From the current situation, it was obvious that her side was in a disadvantageous position. Lin Yuan endured the intense pain of his soul being attacked by the world calamity phaseless beast. He moved the shrine between the two souls and entered his own soul. The shrine fiercely crashed into the world calamity phaseless beast. The golden light spots in the shrine were extremely amiable to Lin Yuan's soul. However, they abnormally rejected the world calamity phaseless beast. These golden light spots were filled with the power of faith, and they quickly filled Lin Yuan's soul. They trapped the world calamity phaseless beast in a corner. The world calamity phaseless beast could attack the mind, and soul. However, it was obviously not familiar with the power of faith. Luo clearly felt the abnormality of the world calamity phaseless beast. She sped up the speed of spiritual power pouring into the world calamity phaseless beast. At that moment, Lin Yuan asked Genius to use its spiritual expansion ability, which had been holding back. The world calamity phaseless beast's spiritual power was like a lake that had been scouring Lin Yuan's mind. At that moment, Lin Yuan's spiritual power connected to Genius's. The world calamity phaseless beast originally wanted to use its spiritual power to scour a pond. But now, it was equivalent to letting the lake's water converge into a sea. The Soul Shrine's attack was fierce, and the world calamity phaseless beast, which had suffered a spiritual power backlash, let out a sharp roar in Lin Yuan's soul. Sensing that something was wrong, Luo immediately let the world calamity phaseless beast use its mother-child twin body and Matrix's blessing. It was prepared to obtain energy from the Matrix and get rid of Lin Yuan. Then, it would control the situation and obtain victory. This battle had been going on for too long. However, Luo had already issued an order to the world calamity phaseless beast. The world calamity phaseless beast used its mother-child twin body and Matrix's blessing. However, it was unable to connect with the Matrix and obtain energy feedback from the Matrix. This was because a second before the world calamity phaseless beast used its mother-child twin body and Matrix's blessing. The reddish-gold radiance covered Lin Yuan's soul and cut off the possibility of this world calamity phaseless beast contacting the outside world. Luo's spiritual power wasn't damaged, which meant that the world calamity phaseless beast was still alive. However, Luo had lost the spiritual connection with the world calamity phaseless beast. At that moment, Luo, who had been in a deadlock with Lin Yuan, opened his eyes. Blood-red air waves mixed with black radiance spread out with Luo as the origin. Originally, Luo's head already had 4 long black horns. Now, these 4 horns extended again, and the horns were covered with blood patterns. The front of Luo's short silver hair was mixed with scarlet. At that moment, Luo's silver hair was almost completely dyed. Luo's figure grew a little taller. A long black tail and a pair of black wings suddenly emerged from Luo's body. The thick long tail was even longer than Luo's height. There was a layer of black-red crystal-like cuticle on the tail. The 2 wingspans were somewhat like the wings of bat species phase, but they were much larger and thicker than the wings of bat species phase. The black wings were engraved with dense red ghost runes. These ghost patterns would automatically emit a melody that was like a devil's whisper. The red ghost patterns on Luo's face spread all the way to the bottom of the collar. Chapter 1762. 6 tadpole-like patterns suddenly appeared in Luo's red vertical pupils, which had originally been black. The 6 tadpole-like patterns rotated. An indescribable aura gushed out from Luo's body. Previously, he had been fighting the demonized Qianyu, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian through the Insect Queen, which had fused with the 1000 Insect Emperor core. While Qianyu was not paying attention, the Insect Queen's spear pierced through Kaihua's body. The Gorgon's silk had added 2 layers of the bone erosion mark through the bone-eroding exploding heart function. He sliced off the Gorgon silk's arms with the blade of the spear. Even the spider's silk under the arms was annihilated by the silver rays. This made Qian Yu furious. Qian Yu actually had a way to launch a counterattack against Lu Jie. However, Qian Yu was aware of Lu Jie's state. Since he was at a disadvantage, Qian Yu wanted to drag out the insect queen, which had fused with the sacred source life form, and defeat it. He did not want to clash head-on with Lu Jie and cause any accidents. Qian Yu was not a creation master, but he knew very well. A suzerain X/fantasy V fairy source-type life form, even if it was a six-winged fairy and a sacred source life form, should not possess such formidable strength. Just as Lu Jie had said, he must have paid a price. In that case, it was just as Lu Jie had said. Lu Jie must have paid a certain price. Qian Yu did not expect Kaihua to be so weak. 2 members of the Freedom Federation had been killed in front of the Freedom Envoy. Qian Yu felt that he had lost all his face. Just as Qian Yu was about to use the Cambrian Pegasus and Deep Freeze King Eel to pay a price, he had summoned his sacred source life form, Hidden Sea Muse, to end the battle. Qian Yu suddenly felt his body go limp. The middle-rank devil in his body was in a state of extreme fear. Qian Yu turned to look at Luo. He was shocked to see Luo's current state. Luo had completely unsealed the great devil in his body. It was important to know that Luo usually only partially unsealed the great devil in her body when she fought. Completely unsealing the great devil would put a certain burden on her body. Why was Luo so angry for no reason? Could it be that there was a problem with the world-wrecking phaseless beast? After Luo completed her transformation, she grabbed at Lin Yuan with her slender black fingernails. In an instant, red energy filled the entire area. Balls of red energy formed stomach pouches one after another on the field. Among them, the stomach formed by the red energy around Lin Yuan's body was the most solid. The gastric sac squirmed violently as though it wanted to digest Lin Yuan. At that moment, the 8 cat tails moved and pierced through the stomach. These 8 cat tails were like ribbons of light. They fluttered gracefully in the scorched ground like fireflies. It floated a dozen meters away. This caused the expressions of those who had seen Lin Yuan's white cat tail to freeze. Lin Yuan had displayed the white cat's tail previously, be it in the counterattack against Luo or in the battle with Han Qi. The cat's tail felt illusory and didn't have a physical body. But now, the cat's tail was abnormally solid. At this moment, everyone saw a white civet that could be described as magnificent, dragging 8 long tails as it crawled out of the red stomach sac. As it waved its tail, it let out a childish meow. However, this childish roar seemed to have some kind of power that was connected to the heavens. Genius had already executed its cat's cluster ability. It had used the elemental affinity and physique of over 3,000 feline fays in the swamp world's spirit cat paradise on its own body. Immediately after, the cat's tail danced. A magnificent aurora was set off on the ground. The aurora set off by Genius's tail was different from a real aurora. Instead, it was an energy belt formed by various elements. In the impression of ordinary people, a fae that possessed more than 5 elements could be called an all-element fae. All-element fays weren't specialized in the elements, and their bodies had limited spiritual power. Thus, all-element fays were usually not very powerful. Fortunately, all-element fays generally had good looks and were often raised as ornamental fays. There were at least a few dozen colors in the aurora. This 8-tailed spirit cat's tail rippled with elements of light, darkness, wind, fire, water, earth, thunder, electricity, and sound. Even some of the mutated attributes were available. The energy belt formed by at least a dozen attributes poured down in a frenzy. Even Luo, who had fused with the great devil, didn't dare to resist it head-on. He hurriedly summoned his other 2 fays to resist. Genius' current strength had already exceeded the limits of a fantasy breed fae. It was just as Lu Jie had said. If one wanted to burst out with powerful strength, one would have to pay a certain price. However, Genius didn't need to pay a price. The ones who had to pay the price were the over 3,000 feline fays in the spirit cat paradise, which had good food and drinks. The original spirit cat wonder house had now become a spirit cat nursing home. Those lively and healthy feline fays were all lying on the ground. If it wasn't for the fact that they could still breathe, people would have thought that these spirit cats had been wiped out. Genius elemental affinity wasn't the only thing that had been enhanced by these 3000 Diamond X/Legend fays. At the same time, it had an extremely strong physique. Genius had been raised by Lin Yuan's side since it was young, so it didn't have the habit of fighting with other feline fays like other feline fays. However, Genius's 8 tails were wrapped with tremendous force. 4 of them smashed at Luo, while the other 4 smashed at Qianyu. Genius' appearance was too stunning, and the audience that was curious about the 8-tailed spirit cat had all solved the mystery in their hearts. They had seen the 8-tailed spirit cat's true appearance. As compared to this 8-tailed spirit cat, the audience was more concerned about Black, the young genius of the Radiance 100. However, the moment the audience, including the Radiance 100 sequence members, saw Black again, they suddenly realized that the silver mask on Black's face was gone. Many people who had been paying attention to Black were guessing his age and appearance. When Black's age was verified, it was no longer a secret. The face behind the silver mask immediately became the thing that the audience was most looking forward to. At this moment, Black, the young genius, finally revealed his face. However, when the Star Web audience and the Radiance 100 sequence members saw Black's face, they couldn't help but have a doubt in their hearts. Damn it, why is Black's face so familiar? 7017K. Chapter 1763. This. Wasn't this the lucky spectator who had defeated Meng Su with a wave of his hand without even summoning a Fey? Wasn't this the Lin Yuan who had released a red light and defeated Meng Su? It was clearly 2 identical faces, but there were many people on Star Web who were unwilling to admit it and did not dare to admit it. There were also many people who had already expected this. They felt that it was only right. The people who were unwilling to admit it were the fans who stood on Lin Yuan's side and Black's side. Black had first appeared on Star Web because he had protected Millstone Town from the Class 1 alien insect dimensional rift and became the Radiance's youth hero. In addition, Black had used a silver healing-type fantasy breed Fey in Millstone Town. It could regenerate severed limbs. Black had always been mysterious on Star Web and had constantly created history on Star Tower. It made Black a true top genius. Lin Yuan's appearance was too sudden and amazing. Both Lin Yuan and Black's sudden appearance had stunned some people's eyes. This caused many people to regard Black and Lin Yuan as their idols. As a result, these radical fans found out that their idols were actually the same person. Damn it, weren't they scolding the other identity of their idols on Star Web every day for the past 6 months? At the thought of this, these fans could not help but shrink their necks and feel embarrassed. At the same time, they were happier than before. Who did not want their idols to be more outstanding? Black's fans and Lin Yuan's fans had quarreled mainly because both sides were unwilling to admit it, but they subconsciously recognized each other's excellence. If it was someone with mediocre talent compared to Black and Lin Yuan, Black and Lin Yuan's fans would definitely not have such a big reaction. Hee, what kind of trash dares to compare with our idols? Hee, what kind of trash dares to challenge our idols? Those Star Web viewers who took it for granted had long felt that Black and Lin Yuan were too similar. The only reason they were not sure was that Lin Yuan and Black were the same person. It was because Black and Lin Yuan had never used the same Fey or the same kind of attack method. However, both of them were too talented, especially Black's strength, which had completely shaken off Chu Ci, who was as famous as Black and Lin Yuan. It had made Chu Ci, who had a bronze fantasy breed Fey, appear to be overshadowed. As for those veteran factions and the top factions, they had seen Lin Yuan defeat Zhong Zhe during the Dark Knight Assembly's Civil and Martial Twin Dragons competition. He knew Lin Yuan's true identity. Therefore, he had never thought that Black was qualified to be mentioned in the same breath as Lin Yuan. However, since Black had defeated Lu Shuang, these veteran forces and the members of the top forces had no choice but to take Black seriously again. Afterward, Black and Han Chi had used Sacred Source lifeforms in their deathmatch on the General Execution platform. The descendants of the top factions and veteran factions knew Black's identity earlier than the other Star Web viewers. At this time, Black's identity was no longer a taboo in the circle of the top forces and veteran forces. Now that Black had chosen to reveal his true face, it was obvious that he had the intention to reveal his true identity. Therefore, the younger generation of these top factions and veteran factions, who rarely spoke on Star Web, started to popularize Black. It was unknown which veteran force or top forces member had accidentally said a few words. He revealed Black's identity as the Moon Empress disciple. In fact, the moment Blackface noticed that the silver mask on his face had disappeared. The happiest ones were the loyal fans who had been paying attention to and supporting Black all the way. It was so dark that these fans had fantasized countless times about what this face would look like behind the mask. However, most fans felt that Black's face wouldn't look good. Otherwise, why would he cover his face with a silver mask? It could be said that Black's true appearance had exceeded the understanding of this group of fans. Previously, Black's fans had felt that even if Black wore a mask, he still had an excellent temperament and a near-perfect bone appearance. Now that Black had taken off his mask, he had a face that perfectly matched his temperament. Sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, and a straight nose bridge. On his youthful face, the tightly pursed corners of his mouth were full of fortitude. Presumably, when Black had been resisting the insect tide in Millstone Town, he had also had such an expression. Zhang Xiaobai, Lu Pinru, Tan Ran, and Xianing had been watching this duel with suspense. They looked at Lin Yuan, who had defeated Han Qi and seemed to have made Luo suffer in the team battle. The trio could not help but sigh at the speed of Lin Yuan's strength improvement in the past 8 months. Back in Millstone Town, Lin Yuan's strongest Fei was only at silver. But now, he was already standing at the peak of the Radiance Federation's younger generation. More importantly, Lin Yuan had just turned 19 this year. The 4 of them were now living in the return from faraway mansion and usually had the opportunity to eat with Lin Yuan. Therefore, the 4 of them had some understanding of Lin Yuan. Looking at Lin Yuan's pursed lips, they knew that Lin Yuan was worried and angry. The moment the white civet with 8 long tails swept its tail towards Luo and Qianyu, Luo and Qianyu were shocked. The Moon Empress, Bamboo Monarch, Chef Supreme, and the Pity God revealed a surprised expression at the same time. It was hard for them to shift their eyes away from genius. The 4 of them were Class 5 Creation Masters, and the Moon Empress was even qualified to call herself a Class 6 Creation Master. Naturally, she only needed a glance to see through Genius's situation. Behind the Pity God, the youth with a black candle burning in his eyes had keenly noticed this. He looked at Genius as well. However, as he did not possess the ability of a Creation Master, he could not see anything special about Genius. However, he knew that this white spirit cat was definitely extraordinary. The Moon Empress' pupils contracted again and again. Through Genius's exclusive skill, the Moon Empress might not be able to see that Genius could become a Creation Master and walk the path of a Creation Master. However, she could see Genius's limitless possibilities. She suddenly understood why Lin Yuan had such a high standard as a Creation Master at such a young age. At the thought of this, the Moon Empress suddenly looked at the Pity God. She noticed that the Pity God was also looking at Lin Yuan. When the Pity God saw the Moon Empress looking at her, she raised her brows. She swung her golden red fishtail and revealed a playful expression. She even smirked at the Moon Empress. The Moon Empress' eyes surged with killing intent. However, she did not know that the Pity God was not interested in Genius but Lin Yuan himself. For some reason, the more she paid attention to Lin Yuan, the more she felt her bloodline throbbing. This feeling was not as obvious as when Qianyu fused with the sacred source life form, Hidden Sea Muse, and stimulated the royal bloodline. However, it was more palpitating and made her bloodline tremble. A cat species Fei, even if it had walked the same path as the phaseless beast, had undergone an evolution that transcended the nature of life, and had become a new species. It could not compare to the feeling that Lin Yuan gave the Pity God, which left a deep impression on her. 7017 K. Chapter 1764. In the beginning, the goddess of compassion still had a sense of belonging to the Freedom Federation. She would not be so indifferent to the death of the younger generation of the Freedom Federation. However, when she broke through to the next level and tried to walk on the path to heaven, the goddess of mercy had left a batch of deep-sea mermaids in the Freedom Ocean next to the Temple of Freedom. Those mermaids were chosen by her with excellent bloodline. The pity goddess planned to let these deep-sea mermaids breed and raise them. This would allow her mermaid bloodline to continue to improve. However, after she went into seclusion, the group of mermaids died. The mirror gods said that the mermaids were used by the foolish god to concoct the spirit liquid. Since then, the goddess of compassion had a grudge against the foolish god. Later, she trained a person she liked to be her highness. That person died in the battle with the Moon Empress. But why was it that the foolish god didn't even show his face when he was supposed to cooperate with the foolish god? After that, the goddess of compassion found it hard to trust anyone around her. Her personality also changed dramatically. She was originally not overly flamboyant, but after she became a goddess, she protected Qianyu in a high-profile manner so that no one would dare to have any ideas about Qianyu. This time, when Qianyu led the team to the Radiance Federation, the goddess of compassion had a bad feeling. Therefore, when Qianyu sent the news, the goddess of compassion personally went to the Radiance Federation. The seemingly coincidental behavior made the goddess of compassion certain her future must have been ruined by someone else. Was it the mirror god, the foolish god, or someone else? The goddess of compassion was not sure. The goddess of compassion was the third goddess of the Freedom Federation. Compared to the foolish god and the mirror god, the goddess of compassion was still far behind. There were some things that were not to be investigated. But it was precisely these circumstances that made the goddess of compassion indifferent to the Freedom Federation even though she was her highness. She regarded everything in the Freedom Federation as her own plaything. Therefore, the goddess of compassion had her eyes on Lin Yuan. She wanted to see what was in this young man's body that could attract her so much. That faceless beast had entered this young man's body. Why did it not come out? In short, the goddess of compassion's interest was all transferred to Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan did not know that he had been targeted by an expert of the Freedom Federation who had embarked on the path to heaven. Lin Yuan was currently using Morbius True Data to check Lu Jie's Sacred Source life form. Sacred Source name, Insect Emperor Core, Sacred Source Species, Source Family / Sacred Source Species, Sacred Source Star, Sacred Source Type, Bug Ability Frowny Face Ultimate Weapon, fuse with a creature related to insects. The stronger the creature's reproductive ability, the more powerful the fusion will be. Under the consumption of life force and reproductive ability, it will become the insect race's final barrier and ultimate weapon to protect the insect race. Awakening of the Emperor. After consuming a large amount of life force, the life force can be used to activate the genetic model of the royal insect, allowing the royal insect's genes to awaken. This will be applied to the final weapon, allowing the queen of the insect race to descend. Before the queen's form disappears, the insect creature that has fused with the queen will receive the queen's blessing once. He had unsealed his long-sealed life imprint. This time, he did not use his ability to heal Lu Jie. Flower of lily. Of lily. Goddess of jade, jade jasmine. On the complex body of the jasmine lily, a bud of one jade rapidly grew. The jasmine lily's crystalline body was like a group of mountains, and the mountains gave off a hint of green. Lin Yuan first shook out 3 drops of life liquid droplets and shot them at the insect queen, which was in ultimate weapon form with the insect emperor core. These 3 drops of life liquid droplets consumed 1/5 of the life energy that Lin Yuan had accumulated. In an instant, the insect queen, which was in ultimate weapon form, was fully replenished. Then, a green beam of light shot out from the bud of jade and landed on the insect queen in ultimate weapon form. It maintained the insect queen's consumption. Lu Jie, who was about to use the insect emperor core's second ability, Emperor of Awakening, suddenly turned to look at Lin Yuan. An emerald lotus flower totem had already grown on Lin Yuan's forehead, fusing with his skin. Lu O's blood-colored totem had spread below his neck. It was very strange and sinister. Lin Yuan's green lotus totem had also spread below his neck. However, it was filled with a sense of vitality and revival. When Lu Jie had stepped forward, Lin Yuan had still been in a deadlock with the phaseless beast entering his body. Now that Lin Yuan had regained consciousness, Lu Jie was relieved. At the very least, Lin Yuan wasn't affected by the phaseless beast's attack. Lu Jie and Lin Yuan had experienced danger together. Back then, Lu Jie had stepped forward bravely and given his all to protect Lin Yuan. In the end, he was saved by Lin Yuan. It was the same now. Once again, Lin Yuan consumed the insect queen's reproductive ability and gave Lu Jie enough vitality to maintain its final weapon form. Lu Jie smiled calmly at Lin Yuan. Many of the spectators who were paying attention to the battle suddenly felt that Lu Jie's face was suddenly filled with life. His whole person seemed to have come to life. At that moment, Lu Jie heard Lin Yuan speak. "Big brother Lu, use your sacred source lifeform's second ability. I'll assist you." Lu Jie did not hesitate to activate the sacred source lifeform's second ability, Emperor Recovery. Even when the insect queen's vitality was at its peak, using Emperor Recovery would immediately drain the insect queen's vitality and reproductive ability. Lu Jie dared to let the insect queen use its final weapon form, but he had never let it use Emperor Recovery. This was because the insect queen could only maintain its empress state for 2 seconds at the cost of all its reproductive ability. Lu Jie would only choose to use it when he was truly risking his life or when he was protecting Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan had Morbius true data, so he naturally knew the cost of using the sacred source lifeform's second ability, Emperor Recovery. At that moment, a sacred sword suddenly appeared in Lin Yuan's hand. However, this sacred sword was no longer glowing with a dark light, nor were there 48 dark crows flying out of the dark light. At this moment, the sword's entire body had turned emerald green. When Lin Yuan had let Princess devour the world crystal core of the Holy Rejuvenation White Deer, she had obtained the Lin Transformation Deer Strike. Lin Yuan had high hopes for the healing sword skill that Princess had obtained from devouring the world crystal core of the Holy Rejuvenation White Deer. He had not expected that the Lin Transformation Deer Strike that Princess had obtained from absorbing the world crystal core of the Holy Rejuvenation White Deer was not a group support healing sword skill. Instead, it was a healing sword skill that worked on a single target. Lin Yuan had been complaining that the Lin Transformation Deer Strike's healing capacity was too high. What kind of situation would require such a high healing capacity? Now, the Lin Transformation Deer Strike could finally be put to use. 7017K. Chapter 1765. The current situation made him realize that no matter how unorthodox a sword technique was, it could still be useful under certain circumstances. If the Forest Transformation Deer Strike was a large-scale sword skill and not a single-target healing sword skill, then Lin Yuan would not be able to use it on the Insect Queen. It would not be able to provide enough vitality for the Insect Queen to use its second ability, Emperor Revival. It would not be able to provide enough vitality for the Insect Queen to use its second ability, Emperor Revival. In Lin Yuan's opinion, Lu Jie's sacred source life form was extremely powerful. Even his own sacred source life form, the sacred sword-wielding queen, could not compare to the Insect Queen's offensive power. The Insect Queen in its final weapon form could suppress the Cambrian Pierfish and the Deep Freeze King Eel. And Xian Yu, who had fused with a middle-rank devil. Xian Yu was the third freedom envoy of the current generation. The Cambrian Pierfish and the Deep Freeze King Eel were both at the peak of Myth 2. The Cambrian Pierfish and the Deep Freeze King Eel had been nurtured with a large amount of resources and had the ability to fight above their grade. In this way, the Insect Queen in its final weapon form had crossed a major grade and reached the peak of Myth 3. Of course, all of this was supported by the Insect Queen consuming a large amount of vitality every second. Lu Jie firmly issued a command to use the second ability of the Insect Queen's sacred source life form, Emperor Revival. The Insect Queen in its human form once again burst out with a silver glow. At this moment, this silver light was dyed with a dazzling crystalline color. At the same time, there was an indescribable majesty. The demonic flower gas shield bug, which Lu Jie had placed on Lin Yuan to protect him at all times, felt this majesty. It let out a few insect cries. Then it curled up its insect legs and knelt on Lin Yuan's shoulder. It bowed in the direction of the insect queen. Rich spiritual energy gushed out from the silver glow. This rich spiritual energy vibrated in the air and let out a sound similar to the insect queen's. This sound made the insect swarm, which was already weak, excited again. The silver insects that had formed in the insect realm were orderly crawling toward the insect queen and fusing with the silver glow. It was as if the silver glow and the insect cries were the insect race's final defense. While Lu Jie used the 10,000 Insects Emperor Core's ability, Emperor Revival, the 10,000 Insects Emperor Core was activated. Lin Yuan's figure suddenly turned into a white deer in the light of vitality released by the sharp sword. There were clusters of flowers growing on the lush vertical horns on the top of its head. The moment the deer's hooves stepped on the ground, a patch of green instantly covered the entire sea of sand. Blending with the silver insect region, it gave off a feeling of the depths of a forest. Lin Yuan transformed into a white deer and leaped toward the insect queen, which was executing the Emperor Revival. He transformed into a deer spirit and attached himself to the insect queen's body. He had obtained the Forest Transformation Deer Strike after absorbing the Class 2 Monarch Grade First Tribulation of Creation Holy Healing White Deer. However, he had already added the Earth Vein Golden Bead into the Holy Healing World. Lin Yuan used the Holy Healing World to execute the Forest Transformation Deer Strike in Holy Sword mode. Although its power was only at the level of a Myth 3 Healing Type Fey, it was still a Myth 3 Healing Type Fey. However, in terms of healing, it had already reached the level of the Creation Breed Holy Rejuvenation White Deer. The Forest Transformation Deer Strike's function was to turn the user of the sword's skill into a deer spirit and attach himself to the target. The moment he attached himself, it was equivalent to Lin Yuan and the Insect Queen becoming one. The vitality energy in the Forest Transformation Deer Strike was equivalent to the vitality energy stored in the Insect Queen's body. When the Insect Queen needed it, it could immediately be used. In addition, Lin Yuan attached himself to the Insect Queen. The vitality energy in Lin Yuan's vitality imprint could also be used by the Insect Queen. This included the huge spiritual power in Lin Yuan's body. When the silver light dissipated, the Insect Queen in a new form appeared in front of the audience. Originally, the Insect Queen was wearing a multifunctional insect armor. At this moment, the Insect Queen's body was already covered with a battle skirt that looked like wings. There was no longer a weapon in its hand. The Insect Queen, which was originally in its final weapon state, had a humanoid face similar to the Insect Queen's elegant face. But now, the face under the Emperor Revival was already different from the elegant face. Instead, it was an unfamiliar and beautiful female face. The eyes of this face were azure gold, with a kind of arrogance and nobility that looked down on everything in the world. Only when she saw the insects would she reveal a bit of love and tenderness. Since Lin Yuan had attached himself to the Insect Queen, he had the most intuitive understanding of the Insect Queen's situation. In its final weapon state, Elegant was the dominant one. Now, the sacred source life form, the Insect Emperor Core, had completely dominated Elegant's body. As the Insect Emperor Core's soul was too huge, Elegant was forced to enter a state of hibernation. It prevented the sacred source life form's soul from being affected by the Insect Emperor Core. At this moment, the Insect Queen in its Emperor Revival state had already risen into the air. With a flick of its battle skirt, two insect currents swept toward Qian Yu and Lu O. Genius was currently in its peak state. It had only used 1/3 of the physical fitness and elemental affinity of the over 3,000 feline phase. Genius had already given Qian Yu and Lu O a certain amount of pressure. Now that the Insect Queen in its Emperor Revival state had joined in, Qian Yu and Lu O, who were already feeling the pressure, felt exhausted. At this moment, a strange smile appeared on the face of the enraged Lu O. When the stomach pouch had enveloped Lin Yuan, it had also enveloped the other areas. The dead Yen Ling, Kai Hua's phase, sacred source lifeforms, and the fused devil had all been digested by the stomach pouch. Yu Changjian was originally still alive, but he had to rely on Hui Yao's request. Otherwise, when the insect queen had entered its final weapon state, it would have killed Kai Hua and Yu Changjian at the same time. However, when the red stomach pouches had disappeared, Yu Changjian, who had been enveloped by the red stomach pouches, had also disappeared. Zhongzhe, who had already lost his ability to fight, looked at Luo in horror. There was only one possibility for this to happen. Luo had completely digested her teammate, Yu Changjian. Suddenly, seaweed sprang out of Luo's body and connected to Qian Yu's body. Then, bone spurs grew out of Luo's tail, and spiderwebs formed between her nails. Black and red spiders slithered out of the spiderwebs. Yan Ling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian's sacred source lifeforms had been linked together. This was because Luo had digested the three of them and their sacred source lifeforms through the Great Devil. This allowed Luo to completely control them. Even though the three sacred source lifeforms were linked together, Luo did not choose to forcefully resist the insect queen and genius abilities. At this moment, Luo opened his mouth and took a deep breath. Under the Emperor Revival state, the insect queen's insect currents and genius elemental attacks were all sucked into Luo's stomach. 7017K. Chapter 1766. Luo's expression was as though he was enjoying a delicacy. Seeing this, the insect queen and genius did not choose to stop. Instead, they continued to attack and were in a stalemate with Luo. Lin Yuan and Lu Jie could see that Luo was absorbing the insect queen and genius attacks. However, they knew that there was a limit to this absorption ability. Once it exceeded this limit, Luo would instantly collapse. In such a stalemate, genius had basically used up all of the energy from Cat's embrace. The insect queen was also about to reach its limit under the Emperor Revival state. The vitality in Lin Yuan's vitality imprint had not been used up, but the forest transformation Deer Strike's healing effect was almost depleted. Lin Yuan was about to remove the insect queen's possession state. In such a situation, if the insect queen continued to maintain the Emperor Revival state, it would soon lose its reproductive ability and vitality and die. Luo, who was in a stalemate with genius and the insect queen, did not have it easy at all. Luo's stomach swelled up. Bean-sized beads of sweat rolled down his face, wetting the red ghost pattern on his face. Sensing that he could not continue, Luo shut his mouth. He forcefully endured the follow-up attacks from Genius and the Insect Queen. He then opened his mouth and spat a ball of black-red energy at the Insect Queen. Firstly, Lin Yuan had fused with the Insect Queen. Secondly, compared to Genius, the Insect Queen gave Luo more pressure. Lin Yuan had been communicating with Lu Jie through Genius' exclusive skill, the Interconnection Tail. After Lu Jie removed the Sacred Source Lifeform's second ability, Emperor Revival, Lin Yuan immediately removed the Insect Queen's possession state. Lin Yuan immediately removed the Insect Queen's possession state. After executing the Forest Transformation Deer Strike, Lin Yuan raised the sacred sword in his hand again. He raised his hand and brandished his sword, which went straight for the ball of black and red energy. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Luo had used the Great Demon's ability to absorb the Insect Queen and Genius attacks into his stomach. After absorbing and transforming Genius and the Insect Queen's attacks, he had transformed them into his own attacks. The energy contained in the dark red energy light bullet made Lu Yifan's face reveal a look of shock. It could be said that this energy had broken through the limits of a myth breed Fae. It had reached the level of a creation breed Fae. But now, even though Black wielded the sacred source life form in its hand, it was still unable to move. If that black-red energy light bullet had hit Black, how could it have survived? Even the peach sky blue bird would be heavily injured or on the brink of death if it was hit by this black and red energy ball. If the spirit chi professionals were hit by the black-red energy light bullet, they would only be turned into ashes. The Moon Empress couldn't help but clench her fists tightly. If the Moon Empress didn't know that Xue Shua had always been hiding in Lin Yuan's hair, she would not have been able to find out. It was likely that the Moon Empress could no longer suppress her impulse and made a move. Upon seeing this scene, Lu Jie frantically rushed in Lin Yuan's direction. However, no matter how fast Lu Jie ran, it was impossible for him to outrun the dark red energy beam. The viewers on Star Web were all holding their breaths. Many of them even closed their eyes. He could not bear to see Black fall. And at that moment, those who were still watching the battle with their eyes wide open suddenly realized that the moment Black was about to collide with the dark red energy light beam, the light beam suddenly stopped moving. The long sword in Black's hand suddenly lit up with a dazzling light. In front of it, a huge silver mirror appeared. Two black tortoises were swimming on the silver mirror. The tortoise shell's reflection ability was stronger than the mirror's surface, and it clearly reflected the dark red energy light beam. If Lu O had activated the Great Devil in his body and swallowed the Insect Queen and Genius's attack with the Emperor Revival had been said to be shocking, then the two silver tortoises in the mirror had actually absorbed the dark red energy light beam. At this moment, the two silver tortoises in the mirror had actually absorbed the dark red energy light beam. Compared to Lu O's absorption of the Insect Queen and Genius's attack with difficulty, the two silver tortoises in the mirror had actually absorbed the dark red energy light beam. When the two silver tortoises absorbed the dark red energy light beam, they appeared to be extremely relaxed. It simply did not reach the limits of the two silver tortoises. Facing Lu O's attack, Lin Yuan used his sword skill, Silver Tortoise Mirror Strike. The effect of the Silver Tortoise Mirror Strike was to inject all the power in the simulated world into the sacred sword. The sacred sword obtained the ability to copy attacks, and it could copy a sword skill from the sacred sword and use it on the enemy. It could absorb energy that was currently not higher than the silver tortoise's limit. During the duration of the effect, he could decide when to release the absorbed attack. It could be said that the Silver Tortoise Mirror Strike was the most flexible among all of Lin Yuan's sword skills. Most of the earth vein golden beads in Lin Yuan's hand were used for the Silver Tortoise Mirror Strike. He also used a large amount of source power to accelerate the growth of these earth vein golden beads in the simulated world. Although the simulated world only had 5 complete earth vein golden beads, the other 3 would still need a few months to be completed. However, Lin Yuan's Silver Tortoise Mirror Strike could already resist the attack of a suzerain-class Creation 6 Tribulation Fae. It was naturally not a problem to absorb this dark red energy light beam, which was comparable to a Creation Seed phase attack. At that moment, in front of the sacred sword, a dark red energy light beam was engraved on the tortoise-shaped mirror. Lin Yuan swung his sword and pointed the tip in Qian Yu's direction. The attack absorbed from Lu O was thrown back to Qian Yu. Lin Yuan's attack stunned the Moon Empress and the other majesties of the Radiance Academy. It also stunned the audience watching the match on Star Web. The originally disadvantageous situation had been completely resolved by Black's operation. It had even reversed the situation. However, at that moment, no one had the time to even send a bullet comment. This was because everyone's mind was on the Freedom Federation's side and whether they could catch Black's reflected attack. Lin Yuan did not throw this attack back to Lu O. Instead, he chose Qian Yu. He had his own considerations. Lu O and the Great Devil's fusion was strong. However, Lu O was a B-rank spirit chi professional. In addition to the phaseless beast, the other 2 summoned phase were both Diamond X/Fantasy V. As an A-rank spirit chi professional, Qian Yu's phase were all at the pinnacle of Suzerain Class X/Myth 2. Lin Yuan could only rely on the princess and the sacred sword mode sword skills. Only then could he compete with Qian Yu. The number of sword skills was limited. In addition to the Whale Sea Leaping Wave Strike, Lin Yuan only had 2 new sword skills left. In other words, if Lin Yuan did not use some unconventional means, he could only hit 3 attacks if he wanted to collide with Qian Yu. Therefore, Lin Yuan wanted to rely on the Silver Tortoise Mirror Strike to reflect the dark red energy light beam. He wanted to kill Qian Yu's 2 main phase, the Cambrian Pier Fish and the Deep Freeze King Eel. 7017K. Chapter 1767. Qian Yu's 2 Suzerain X/Myth 2 phase were the Cambrian Pegasus and the Deep Frost King Eel. In the battle against the swarm of insects, it did not consume much spiritual power. After all, no matter how ferocious the swarm was, their strength was still several levels lower than the Cambrian petrified fish and the deep freeze king eel. The spiritual energy in Qian Yu's Cambrian fish and deep freeze king eel was mainly consumed when fighting against the insect queen, the ultimate weapon. When Lu Jia used the Thousand Insect Emperor Core's second function, the insect queen entered the emperor recovery state. Lu O used the Great Devil's ability to absorb the insect queen's and genius attacks from the emperor's revival. Therefore, even though Qian Yu seemed to be in a difficult position when fighting against the insect queen in its final weapon form, he was still able to defeat the insect queen. The Cambrian pier fish and the deep freeze king eel were both cut open by the insect queen's spear. However, the Cambrian Peiyu and the deep freeze king eel only suffered the most basic skin injuries. There was still a lot of spiritual power in their bodies. From the start, Lu Yifan had the sacred source life form, the sky peach bluebird, protect everyone in the team. After that, he did his best to assist Zhong Zhe and the bug swarm. The spirit energy inside Lu Yifan's body is almost depleted. However, Qian Yu was afraid that the sea region released by his main Fei would affect his teammates. Therefore, Qian Yu had been trying his best to suppress it. Now, Yan Ling, Kai Hua and Yu Changjian had been eaten by Lu O. Qian Yu had nothing to worry about. Qian Yu did not dare to be careless in the slightest when he saw the black and red energy shooting toward him. He immediately used the Cambrian petrified fish and the deep freeze king eel to defend. It wasn't that Qian Yu hadn't thought of escaping to avoid this attack. However, according to his observations, Qian Yu noticed that the silver mirror in front of black was reflecting the figures of the Cambrian Pegasus and the deep freeze king eel. The black and red energy bullets reflected by the mirror would be deflected according to the direction of the mirror. No matter how fast the Cambrian Peiyu and the deep freeze king eel were, it was impossible for them to escape the range of the mirror. Actually, Qian Yu had another choice. That was to separate the Cambrian Peiyu and the deep freeze king eel. The silver mirror could only choose one of its fays to shine on. This way, he could sacrifice one fay to protect the other fay. However, Qian Yu did not do so. Part of it was because Qian Yu was afraid that the mirror wouldn't be able to lock onto the two fays. Black will turn the mirror to himself. On the other hand, Qian Yu wasn't willing to let any of his fays die. Qian Yu planned to risk it. He wanted to see his two-peak myth two fays resist with all their might. Would there be a chance to block this dark red energy beam? At this critical moment, Qian Yu issued an order. The Cambrian fish once again used Cambrian Descend. However, during the process of casting the Cambrian's descent, Qian Yu asked the Cambrian fish to carefully control the area of the sea. He didn't dare to let the sea get within 50 meters of Lin Yuan. He was afraid that the energy in the sea would be absorbed by the strange lotus leaves and lotus flowers again. This time, the Cambrian fish did not use this area to attack. Instead, he used the water elements to form an even thicker armor on the surface of his reddish-purple shield. At the same time, he opened his mouth and unleashed his strongest attack, Cold Warrior Breath, at the dark red energy ball that was flying towards him. The Deep Frost King Eel twisted its body in the water, creating layers of strange ripples in the sea. These ripples intertwined, causing the sea to become more solid. At that moment, the Deep Frost King Eel used its exclusive skill, Extreme Deep Cold. It froze the entire sea. Lin Yuan saw Qian Yu use this method to bind himself. The sacred sword in his hand changed its original move. Qian Yu, the Cambrian fish, and the Deep Frost King Eel, who were trapped in the ice, had become turtles in a jar. There was no possibility of escape. Lin Yuan didn't need to worry about using the silver mirror to aim. Thus, he cancelled the silver turtle mirror strike and unleashed his fastest attack so far. It was the sword skill obtained by absorbing the Gale World's crystals, 9 nails wind scissors stab. 9 spikes wind scissor stab, fire out 9 spikes at the fastest speed, condensed from the Gale World force. The destructive power of each spike increases, and each spike has the effect of a scissor, capable of tearing apart tough objects. After each scissor attack tears the target apart, it will automatically absorb the target's energy and inject it into the next attack. When all 5 attacks have energy feedback by tearing the target apart, the next 4 attacks will have an accelerated effect. Lin Yuan had initiated the Blood Force Extreme battle through the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden. He had harvested the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden time and time again and obtained a lot of world crystals that could only be found in Creation Breed phase. Of course, the Miao family itself didn't have that many Emperor-class experts. Most of the Miao family's Emperor-class experts were nurtured by Lin Yuan's own investment of resources. Among the more than 20 world crystals that Lin Yuan had obtained from the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden, the Gale World Crystal Core produced from the Suzerain Class 1 Creation Lineage Wind Demon Dragonfly was actually not very outstanding. However, Lin Yuan had never had a strong resistance to wind elemental energy. Moreover, Lin Yuan had obtained so many movement techniques and combat skills through the body-transcending memory grass. He also needed an affinity with wind elemental energy to improve his movement technique speed. That was why Lin Yuan chose the only wind-related Gale World Crystal Core among all the World Crystal Cores. As a result, the sword skill, 9 Nails Wind Scissors Stab, became a single-target sword skill with more offensive power than the Dark Crow Withering Strike. According to true data, the introduction of the 9 Nails Wind Scissors Stab highlighted its speed. However, Lin Yuan had never used it before and could not be sure how fast it could be. Lin Yuan was now using the 9 Nails Wind Scissors Stab. He hoped that the 9 attacks of the 9 Nails Wind Scissors Stab could hit the solid ice wall of the Deep Freeze King Eel first before the Black-Red Energy Light bullets. Through the sword skill's effect, it could tear apart solid objects and break the ice layer first. It could reduce the energy loss in the Black-Red Energy Light bullets. Even if it failed, it could be used when the Black-Red Energy Light bullets exploded the ice layer and attacked the Deep Freeze King Eel and the Cambrian Peatfish. It would have the effect of finishing off the attack. The Cambrian Peatfish's shield skin and the Deep Freeze King Eel's wrinkled skin all had extremely strong defensive abilities. It happened to be restrained by the 9 Nails Wind Scissors Stab's cutting effect. However, Lin Yuan found that he had still underestimated the sword skill's speed. The 9 Nails Wind Scissors Stab was not as gorgeous as other sword skills. Lin Yuan's sacred sword, which had turned blue, turned into a sword mark in the air. This sword mark exploded with thousands of turbulent flows. The turbulent flows stirred up a gust of wind. The 9 dragonflies lined up in a capital letter. At a speed invisible to the naked eye, they shot straight toward the ice layer. The huge force pushed Lin Yuan back 50 to 60 meters. It happened to hit Lu Jie. 7017 K. Chapter 1768. The collision caused Lu Jie to stagger, but he firmly held on to Lin Yuan's shoulder with his hand. Lin Yuan wouldn't be thrown to the ground by this huge force. However, no matter how fast these 9 dragonflies flew, the Black-Red Energy Light bomb still exploded on the ice layer first. It blasted a big hole in the ice layer. When the Black-Red Energy Light bomb exploded on the ice layer, its momentum didn't decrease. The 9 dragonflies successfully overtook Lin Yuan. The first dragonfly used the cutting effect on the ice layer. The ice layer cracked from the inside, and a crack of nearly 20 meters was neatly opened. After the first dragonfly exhausted its energy, it immediately injected the energy it absorbed from the ice layer into the second dragonfly. It went back and forth. As the dragonfly in front would inject energy into the dragonfly behind. The dragonfly's destructive power on the ice layer was getting stronger. The 5th dragonfly broke the ice layer nearly 50 meters away. It revealed Xianyu, the Cambrian Pegasus, and the Deep Freeze King Eel in the middle of the ice layer. According to the sword skill, the 9 Nails Wind Scissors Stab's effect, the first 5 attacks would get energy feedback by tearing the target apart. The attack and speed would increase again. The 4 attacks that had been sped up left 4 black scars in the air, causing the space to wrinkle. The 4 attacks stacked on the Cambrian Pegasus. The sword skill, 9 Nails Wind Scissors Stab, was special in the right way. It could stack the damage of 9 attacks. At that moment, the 9 nails wind scissors stacked damage absorbed the defensive effect of the Cambrian Pegasus and the deep freeze king eel. As a result, under the attack of the 9 dragonflies, the Myth 2 Cambrian pierfish instantly exploded into a bloody mess that filled the air. The 9th dragonfly had yet to dissipate. However, the color of this 9th dragonfly was extremely dim. It was hitting the deep freeze king eel through the Cambrian Pegasus body. Qian Yu was a little stunned the moment the Cambrian Pegasus died. He was clearly the strongest existence on the field, and both his phase were at the peak of Myth 2. There shouldn't be any problem with his all-out defense. How did his defense get broken? It would have been fine if it had been blasted by the black-red energy light bomb. That black-red energy light bomb was Lu O's all-out attack. Qian Yu would only need to defend against this kind of attack that was at the level of a creation breed Fey. There were too many questions in Qian Yu's mind that he couldn't understand. The Cambrian Pegasus' death caused Qian Yu's spiritual energy to ache. The dragonfly, which no longer had any energy, did not cause any substantial damage to the deep freeze king eel. It couldn't even break the king eel's skin. But at that moment, the black-red energy light bomb had arrived. Apart from the first collision, he had been using the 9 nails wind shear stab to pave the way. The energy in the dark red energy light bullet did not suffer much damage. After Yan Ling's death, Kai Hua and Yu Changjian no longer had any value to the team. For the sake of the team's victory, Luo could eat the dead Yan Ling and Kai Hua with peace of mind. The monk was still alive, but Yu Changjian could only watch from the sidelines. Yu was killed. But Yu was still monk. Qian Yu's trump card was the Hidden Sea Muse, a sacred source life form that had been forcibly raised to 7 stars by the goddess of compassion. The sacred source life form, Hidden Sea Muse, is very powerful. It has the ability to change the tide of the battle. Qian Yu's sacred source life form, Hidden Sea Muse, has awakened the mermaid royal bloodline. Qian Yu's strength will increase by a lot if he activates the Hidden Sea Muse's mermaid royal bloodline. After forcefully absorbing the myriad insect emperor core and fusing with it, the insect queen, which was in the emperor awakening state, and the special feline phase all-out attack, the insect queen had unleashed its emperor awakening state. As a B-rank spirit chi professional, Lu O's spiritual power was almost depleted. Lu O knew that if he didn't use devil manifestation, he would become a greater devil. He wouldn't be able to do anything. Hence, Lu O planned to use his remaining spirit power to activate his sacred source life form. He would use the sacred source life form to protect Qian Yu. At this thought, Lu O pointed her finger in the direction of Qian Yu. A golden chain came out of Lu O's finger. He connected himself to Qian Yu. Lu O and Qian Yu's figures started to blur. It was as if they were going to disappear from the origin world. However, Lu O soon discovered that his sacred source life form had lost its function. After Gao Feng used the Yellow Spring Lily's ability to save Zhongzai's burning sky roar, he did not do anything else. He had been waiting for Qian Yu and Lu O to summon their sacred source life forms. He would use the memory-eating music box's memory magic scissors to seal Lu O and Qian Yu's sacred source life forms functions. Gao Feng was using the memory-eating music box's memory magic scissors to seal Lu O and Qian Yu's sacred source life forms functions. Gao Feng was using the memory-eating music box's memory magic scissors to seal Lu O's sacred source life forms functions. Lu O's sacred source life form was 4-star. The 6-star memory-eating music box used the memory magic scissors to seal Lu O's sacred source life form's 2 functions. Lu O's sacred source life form became a decoration. This sudden turn of events left Lu O with no choice. He could only use the gift of the functional tooth he had obtained from devouring the Gorgon's tooth. He temporarily lent his greater devil power source to Qian Yu. At the same time, he used the algae chain flow function he had obtained from Yan Ling's Gorgon's clam to link himself with Qian Yu. He was prepared to contribute his life energy to Qian Yu. This would allow Qian Yu to use his greater devil power source and his own life energy to withstand the attack. Lu O was the one who had released the dark red energy beam. Hence, Luo was very clear about how powerful the attack was. As long as Qian Yu was willing to sacrifice the deep freeze king eel. Qian Yu, who had fused with a middle-rank greater devil, and Gao Feng's assistance. He could withstand the attack. However, if Qian Yu withstood this attack, he would suffer very serious injuries. However, Qian Yu's injuries were not within Luo's consideration. Luo was assisting Qian Yu so that he could summon the submerged sea muse while he was still alive. Then, he would use the submerged sea muse's function. He had to win the battle. After winning the battle, Qian Yu's life or death was no longer within Luo's consideration. Luo's sacred source life form was sealed, and he could not use it. His spirit power was depleted. He could only rely on Qian Yu. Given Gao Feng's current strength, he could not compare to Qian Yu's submerged sea muse, which was a 7-star sacred source life form. Qian Yu had been able to become a freedom envoy in such an intense battle because of the Goddess of Compassion's blessing. Another reason was that Qian Yu's sacred source life form was too special. In short, the outcome of the battle depended on Qian Yu. 7017K. Chapter 1769. In the direction of the Freedom Federation's envoy, there was a young man's figure. He was currently looking at Lu Jia and Lin Yuan with a playful gaze. At the same time, he occasionally glanced at Gao Feng. The purple flame of the black candle in his eyes flickered. Within the flame, there seemed to be something indescribable. The young man muttered in a voice that only he could hear. I didn't expect that after sleeping for 3,000 years, the origin world situation would become like this. The Freedom Federation and the Radiance Federation are really interesting. In the past 3,000 years, the origin world has really nurtured a few humans who can awaken their birth providences and step onto the path to heaven. Demons and desolate bloodline phase are interesting. But the Radiance Federation's luck is a little too good. Among the sacred source lifeforms contracted, there are actually 3 that came from sovereigns. And why is the aura of one so special? This aura seems to be a mixture of 2 temperaments. As he muttered to himself, the young man looked at Li Su, who was standing in front of him. There was a mocking look in his eyes. Thousands of miles away, in a huge palace, a woman dressed in black clothes had the same mocking look on her face as the young man. She held a few eternal hearts in one hand and tossed them around, constantly playing with them. Her other hand touched the girl doll hanging on her chest. Her fingers fiddled with the girl doll's grayish-black wings, and she seemed to be in deep thought. Immediately after, the woman looked at the 7 huge black coffins behind her, which were still closed. The woman in black used her hand to gently pinch the girl doll with 2 pairs of wings. Next, she used her hand to pinch the armored youth doll beside the girl doll. Immediately after, the 2 dull-colored dolls suddenly showed a hint of spirit. It was as if something had been taken back into the 2 dolls. Then the woman in black stood up and walked out of the castle. She looked up at the blue sky, and her eyes revealed a meaningful look. She said softly, "Since I'm awake, the little thing that was separated from my body like the gardener konjac is no longer useful. After Zhuiheng wakes up in 5 months, I'll let the whole world feel the power of the hibernator." At the same time, in the Radiance Royal Capital, in the viewing area of the Radiance Sacred Hall's duel. Within the Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission, a cry of surprise suddenly rang out. This voice sounded like a person who had just woken up from a dream. Li Su frowned and looked behind him. The Freedom Federation's envoys were at a disadvantage in the battle against the Radiance Federation. The people standing behind him were all members of the 100 sequence who could not participate because they were not capable enough. Not being able to step onto the stage was one thing, but making such a rash noise was simply throwing the face of the Freedom Federation. When Li Su saw the young man's appearance, his brows furrowed even tighter. This was because Li Su knew very well that the 2nd page of revival should be stored in this youth's body. Since the arrival of the Goddess of Mercy, things had deviated from Li Su's original plan. The 2nd page of Renaissance had a grudge against Goddess Lian. Li Su did not have the ability to persuade Lian Shen not to cause trouble for 2nd page revival after seeing him. Thus, Li Xian had privately dissolved the agreement between him and the second page of revival. He was prepared to ignore second page of revival. If he couldn't guarantee his own interests, why would he care about the interests of others? However, this did not mean that Li Su no longer needed the second page of revival. It was true that he had unilaterally dissolved the agreement with the second page of revival, but with the Hui Yao and the Goddess of Mercy at the back, there was no way out. He had to fight to the death. This way, the second page of revival would be able to better complete his plan. But now, there was no trace of the second page of revival. This youth's memory had been maintained before he was parasitized by the second page of revival. At that time, this youth had just arrived at the Radiance Federation. He only knew that Qian Yu was leading the team, but he had never seen the two highnesses, Li Su and the Goddess of Mercy. But now, he had suddenly appeared here and met two His Majesties in a row. This made this youth lose his composure. However, just as this youth was about to calm down and greet Li Su and the Goddess of Mercy, a drop of golden red water shot towards this youth as the Goddess of Mercy's fishtail flapped easily. The golden red water droplet was as magnificent as a gem. But after it shot towards this youth, the youth actually exploded into a dazzling peach blossom in an instant. This youth might not have reached the level of a Highness favored or a Highness disciple in the Freedom Federation. However, to be able to enter the Independent 100 sequence meant that he was a true elite genius. Just because he lost his composure a little, he was killed by the Goddess of Mercy without hesitation. It was as easy as pouring a cup of water. The Goddess of Mercy's actions made the legs of the other Independent 100 sequence members tremble. They were no different from the youth who was killed by the Goddess of Mercy. If that youth could be killed so easily, then it would be the same for them. The Moon Empress and the Highnesses of the Radiance Federation were already aware of the various styles of the Freedom Federation. But seeing this situation now, they could not help but narrow their eyes. The Moon Empress' gaze was fixed on the Goddess of Mercy. She could faintly see from the Goddess of Mercy's face. The Goddess of Mercy seemed to be angry about something. However, this anger was concealed very well by the Goddess of Mercy. At the same time, the Goddess of Mercy could kill the Independent 100 sequence members in this situation. She did not have much sense of identity and honor towards the Freedom Federation. Therefore, she would not be angry because the Freedom Federation's team was at a disadvantage. The Goddess of Mercy's gaze was fixed on Qian Yu. Was the Goddess of Mercy angry that Qian Yu had been attacked by her disciple, Lin Yuan? The Moon Empress could not guess this. But if the Goddess of Mercy was really angry that Qian Yu had been attacked by Lin Yuan, then she should be looking at Lin Yuan. But why was she looking at Qian Yu? It was as if Qian Yu had provoked the Goddess of Mercy. As for the Goddess of Mercy's action of killing the Independent 100 sequence members, only the Radiance 100 sequence members present had seen it. The Star Web audience had no way of knowing. As the venue for the team battle was too big, there was no way to use one screen for the broadcast. However, the battle with the Freedom Federation's envoy did not seem like a Radiance 100 sequence selection. They could watch the battle from any perspective. If the Freedom Federation's envoy's perspective was used, the movement of the Freedom Federation's envoy would be exposed. Fighting in such a complicated terrain would make use of the environment to conceal themselves. It was an excellent battle method in itself. Therefore, in order to make it convenient for the audience to watch, Lin Yuan, Lu Jia, Zhong Zhe, Lu Yifan, and Gao Feng each carried a special Star Web card. This Star Web card allowed the Star Web officials to view the battle from the perspective of 5 people. They would broadcast this battle that concerned the dignity and honor of the Radiance Federation. 7017K. Chapter 1770. Mercy Deity's act of casually killing a member of the 100 sequence did not cause a stir on the Star Web. However, the Radiance 100 sequence members who had witnessed everything were unable to calm down for a long time. At the thought of their 13 holiness, the Radiance 100 sequence members felt a surge of warmth in their hearts. At this moment, the black and red energy light bomb had already exploded on the deep freeze king eel that was in front of Qian Yu. Qian Yu had obtained Great Devil Luo's energy source and life energy. At this critical juncture, he summoned his other fae. Qian Yu was taking the elite route, so he didn't have a lot of faes. However, each of Qian Yu's faes was at the pinnacle of myth too. This giant purple jellyfish clearly possessed the bloodline of the Nether River jellyfish. However, the Nether River jellyfish bloodline hadn't been completely activated yet. Moreover, this jellyfish's bloodline had mutated quite a bit in the Netherworld River jellyfish bloodline. In terms of bloodline, it was very high quality. But before this jellyfish could display any combat ability, Qian Yu used its soft body as a shield. Anyway, he had already lost one of his main faes, the Cambrian pier fish, and could not keep the deep freeze king eel. One more fae wouldn't make a difference. As long as he could survive and return to the Freedom Federation. The compassionate goddess would always be able to help him obtain the secret medicine from the foolish god that could heal spirit chi professionals' damaged psyche and allow them to contract faes again when their faes died. Qian Yu actually had other reasons for doing so. That was to fuse with the sacred source life form, the hidden sea songstress. He had to ensure that he had a good physique. If he was heavily injured and fused with the submerged sea songstress, his combat power would also be greatly reduced. Although Qian Yu had been targeted by Lin Yuan and had suffered serious injuries, he was still able to withstand Lin Yuan's attacks. However, Qian Yu had been carefully analyzing the battle situation. As a freedom envoy, Qian Yu's talent had to be acknowledged. Qian Yu had already seen the weakness of Lu Yifan, Zhong Zhe, and Lu Jie. Gao Feng was a pure support. He had already summoned his sacred source life form to restrain Yan Ling. After Yan Ling's death, Lu Ou's sacred source lifeforms were also restricted. However, a pure support was still a pure support. Qian Yu understood best why Hui Yao had raised the condition that only one person could be attacked before the other four fell. Currently, Hui Yao's side looked unscathed, but the only one who had the ability to fight was Black. At the thought of this, when the black-red energy bullets hit the Deep Freeze King Eel and his jellyfish fae, the Deep Freeze King Eel's body suddenly exploded. Qian Yu merged with the sacred source life form, Hidden Sea Muse. The black and red energy beam took away the Deep Freeze King Eel's life. The jellyfish fae was severely injured by the explosion and was on the verge of death. It basically had no combat strength. At this moment, the deep blue water suddenly spread out with Qian Yu as the center. Lu Yifan exclaimed in disbelief when he sensed the sacred source life form aura on Qian Yu's body. It's a 7-star sacred source life form. Only a 6-star sacred source life form would understand how difficult it was to raise a sacred source life form's star level to 7 stars. Many people who were lucky enough to contract a sacred source life form had been stuck at a bottleneck between 3 stars and 4 stars. However, from 3 stars to 4 stars, there was only a small threshold for a sacred source life form to cross from the infancy stage to the growth stage. From the growth stage to the mature stage, which was 6 stars to 7 stars, was a huge threshold. Most people who contracted sacred source life forms found it difficult to cross this threshold. Even if they could, it would take many years of accumulation. At present, among the current generation of Radiance envoys, no one's sacred source life form had crossed the threshold from 6 stars to 7 stars. From the growth stage to the mature stage, it took a large amount of resources to reach 6 stars. For example, His Majesty Cicada Cry had used his sacred source life form's intent dispelling wind origin power to raise Gao Feng's sacred source life form to 6 stars. However, it had not reached 7 stars. This was enough to show how difficult it was to cross the threshold from 6 stars to 7 stars. However, Qian Yu's sacred source life form had reached 7 stars. A 7-star sacred source life form did not just have one more function than a 6-star sacred source life form. A 7-star sacred source life form's life grade had been upgraded. A 6-star sacred source life form's function did not have many restrictions on a 7-star sacred source life form. For example, Gao Feng's memory-eating music box could easily control Yan Ling, Kai Hua, Yu Changjian, and Lu Ou's sacred source life forms. However, there was no way to restrain Qian Yu's sacred source life form. Forcefully restraining it might not have the same effect. However, there would definitely be a backlash. This was why all the experts were working hard to raise the sacred source lifeform's star level. Star level was the king of sacred source lifeforms. Originally, if there was a large amount of water elemental energy around him and the water elemental energy was hostile towards him, then he would be blessed by the blue lotus. Since Lin Yuan was blessed by the blue lotus, lotus leaves should be growing under his feet, and a lotus flower should be blooming. However, the deep blue sea had already covered the entire dual area. The bamboo monarch had to intervene to prevent the deep blue sea from spreading. Shueshua, who was lying in Lin Yuan's hair, sighed. The sacred source lifeform's function is a kind of ability that is recognized by the world's will. Even the blessings of the heavenly spirits cannot go against the ability recognized by the world's will. Although the blue lotus blessings could not absorb the water elemental energy, Lin Yuan had the blue lotus blessings and Princess had absorbed the vast sea world. Lin Yuan now had the ability to breathe underwater. He did not need to float to the surface like Zhong Zhe, Lu Jia, Lu Yifan, and Gao Feng. At that moment, Lin Yuan, who was hovering in the sea, looked like a life form that should have lived in the deep sea. Qian Yu was still fusing with the demon in his body. However, Qian Yu's appearance had changed greatly. Qian Yu's legs had become a fish tail. The tail of this fish was very wide. It was a strange purplish-blue color. With a light flick of the fish tail, a turbulent undercurrent would appear in the sea that had suddenly appeared. The scales on the fish tail were similar to fish scales and snake scales. Qian Yu's upper body had a metallic purplish-black luster because he had fused with the demon. Fine scales appeared on Qian Yu's waist, abdomen, and neck. Even the ghost tattoo on his cheeks was covered by a few fine scales. Qian Yu's golden short hair had turned into long, purplish-blue hair that fluttered freely in the sea. The long hair was slightly curled and was similar to the color of the fish tail. Lin Yuan was not in the mood to pay attention to the changes in Qian Yu's appearance. Looking at the mermaid Qian Yu, Lin Yuan suddenly had a strange feeling. Looking at the mermaid like Qian Yu, Lin Yuan suddenly had a strange feeling in his heart. 7017K. Chapter 1771. Lin Yuan could not help but feel a trace of contempt for the transformed Qian Yu. Lin Yuan, who had such a thought, felt rather strange. Lin Yuan had always been kind to others and had empathy. When it came to non-principled issues, he would consider it for others. It could be said that apart from the people from the Apex faction, the Whale Ocean Trade, who had betrayed the Radiance Federation back then, there was no one else. Lin Yuan had never despised anyone. He had never felt such disdain towards anyone. However, it was also unnatural for Lin Yuan to feel contempt for Qian Yu. Qian Yu's strength was very strong. He was the Freedom Federation's third-ranked freedom envoy. In terms of strength, Lin Yuan was not qualified to despise Qian Yu. If not for Blue Lotus Blessing, Lu Jia would not have been able to use the 1000 Insect Emperor Core to allow the Insect Queen to enter the Emperor Awakening state. Lin Yuan's sword skills happened to work again. It killed Qian Yu's two main fays. It caused the main fay that Qian Yusin had summoned to be injured. Lin Yuan simply couldn't beat Qian Yu. Moreover, Qian Yu had fused with an 8-star sacred source life form. Lin Yuan, who only had a 4-star sacred source life form, could easily sense the might and pressure of an 8-star sacred source life form. Even so, Lin Yuan still looked down on Qian Yu. Lin Yuan thought about this feeling and realized that it was the same feeling Red Thorn had when it looked down on 2-winged and 4-winged fairies. This was a kind of disdain that came from instinct, or perhaps it could be said that it came from his bloodline. Lin Yuan suddenly recalled that he and Bai Lan would turn into mermaids when they fused together. Compared to before, Bai's current strength was like the difference between heaven and earth. The aquamarine elemental shellfish in the Spirit Lock spatial zone produced water attribute heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. Before this, Azure had to share it with the floating island whale. But now, after the floating island whale hatched, it needed to consume a certain amount of pure water and wind elemental energy. However, it mainly absorbed pure spiritual energy. Hence, The heavenly maiden-grade water elemental pearls, apart from the ones that were traded to Yin Lin, were not worth it. They were all digested and absorbed by Bai Lan. Azure's current strength had reached Diamond X, but her grade was still legendary. It was because it was too special for Blue to evolve into a fantasy breed Fae. The blue formed by the 12 water columns must be mastered from the strange water. Only then could one become a fantasy breed. When Yin Lin had exchanged the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls with him, she had brought him 3 kinds of top-notch mutant waters. Lin Yuan found another one after searching for it. Now, Bai Lan had comprehended 4 characteristics from the top-tier mutated water. Apart from that, Blue's strength was also related to the amount of power of faith in the shrines between his 2 souls. Since he had discovered the power of faith, he had been thinking of ways to fill it up. During the Blood Oath Extreme duel between the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden and Sky City, Lin Yuan had specially asked Tian Ningning to find other reporters to report this Blood Oath Extreme battle on a large scale. However, the previous incidents were just small skirmishes. Although it had allowed him to obtain a large amount of power of faith, it was not comparable to what came after. Black had displayed his strength on the star web, breaking the Celestial Stairways record consecutively and defeating Lu Shuang, obtaining a lot of faith power. As compared to the power of faith obtained during the Radiance 100 sequence selection, this power of faith was much weaker. 6 black wings spread out from his back, forming a yellow sand castle in the sky, and summoning a sea of flowers to block the insect swarm. The power of faith in Lin Yuan's shrine increased rapidly. In particular, after the general slaying battle, the power of faith in Lin Yuan's shrine had increased by half. In the current team battle, the power of faith in Lin Yuan's shrine was increasing at an unimaginable speed every minute and second. If Lin Yuan's shrine was like a cluster of shining golden nebulae, then Lin Yuan's shrine was like a galaxy. In that case, Lin Yuan's shrine now seemed to have formed a Milky Way. Even Lin Yuan himself could not estimate how much power of faith he had obtained. In short, Lin Yuan was now truly using his strength to harvest the faith of the entire Radiance sect. Lin Yuan had not fused with Bai Lan for a long time. At present, in this sea area, there was no Fae more useful than him fusing with Bai Lan and turning into a mermaid. Lin Yuan knew very well that this sea area restricted Lu Jia, Gao Feng, Zhong Zhe, and Lu Yifen's mobility. When he fused with Bai Lan, not only was it more suitable for fighting in the sea area, but it could also control the sea area. Only by controlling the sea area could Lin Yuan protect Lu Jia, Gao Feng, Zhong Zhe, and Lu Yifen, who could not swim, from Qian Yu's attack. After transforming, Qian Yu was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he looked at Lin Yuan with a mocking and tyrannical expression. Bloodthirsty said, "You killed 2 of my fays, and because of you, my 3rd fae was also severely injured. Now, it's time for you to pay the price." Lin Yuan's expression did not change at all when he heard Qian Yu's words, and he did not care about Qian Yu. During this process, Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check Qian Yu's Sacred Source life form. Sacred Source name, Hidden Sea Songstress, Sacred Source species, Source family/Sacred Source species, Sacred Source star grade, 8 stars, Sacred Source type, water function frowny face mermaid sea, using the power of the mermaid bloodline, a body of water that can only be controlled and breathed freely through the mermaid power. When any living being is in the mermaid sea, they will hear the mermaid song. The mermaid song has the ability to confuse. Targets or living beings that are confused by the mermaid song will fall to the bottom of the mermaid sea and become nutrients for the mermaid sea. Myriad sea brambles, using the fishtail to release the mermaid power in the sea area, thorns that match the mermaid power will grow at the bottom of the sea. The thorns have a series of effects such as blood-sucking, armor-piercing, poison, paralysis, and sharpness. Targets that are entangled and stabbed by the thorns will hear the mermaid song more clearly. At the same time, they will be cursed by the mermaid and become half-mermaids. Bubble legend, when receiving a fatal attack, it will automatically turn into bubbles and disperse the damage to the sea area. The damage will be shared by the sea area itself and other living beings in the sea area. By consuming the mermaid power, targets with mermaid bloodlines weaker than itself in the sea area can be disintegrated into bubbles by consuming the sea area's energy. Lin Yuan discovered that as an 8-star sacred source life form, the hidden sea songstress' 3 functions were extremely powerful. Ever since Lin Yuan had been in the sea area created by the hidden sea songstress, he had heard the faint singing. However, the singing did not affect Lin Yuan at all. Logically speaking, the mermaid's singing should be very pleasant to listen to. However, when Lin Yuan heard the mermaid's singing, it sounded like the chirping of pheasants. It was difficult to listen to. 7017K. Chapter 1772. Just as he was wondering how such a voice could charm other life forms and make them fall to the bottom of the sea, through Genius's exclusive skill, the interconnection tale, Lin Yuan realized that apart from Gao Feng was not the only one. Intoxicated expressions appeared on the faces of Lu Jia, Zhong Zhe, and Lu Yifan. However, it depended on the difference in soul power, mental energy, and spiritual energy. The degree of intoxication on their faces was also slightly different. Fortunately, Zhong Zhe had been tormented by the curse, so his mental power and soul force were much stronger than ordinary experts. The insect queen was a spiritual type Fae, and its spiritual energy couldn't be distributed to Lu Jia like Genius, which possessed the spiritual expansion ability. At the same time, he could also give Lu Jia some feedback. That was why Lu Jia and Zhong Zhe didn't sink to the bottom of the sea. Lin Yuan knew that Gao Feng wasn't affected because Qian Yu hadn't done anything to him due to the rules. Lin Yuan hastily performed calm mind many times on Lu Jia, Zhong Zhe, and Lu Yifan. What eased the situation of the 3 of them? He found that all 3 functions of the hidden sea muse mentioned the power of merfolk. Merfolk power belonged to the power of the merfolk bloodline. After Lin Yuan and Bailan fused, they would also become merfolk. When Lin Yuan transformed into a mermaid, the sacred source life form had once recognized him as its ruler. He was not sure if he had the appearance of a mermaid or if he really had the power of a mermaid's bloodline after transforming into a mermaid. Legend had it that the soul remembrance whale was only close to the deep-sea mermaids. Only the deep-sea mermaids could see the soul whale. Not only could Lin Yuan see it, but he had also contracted it. The thought soul whale was very close to Lin Yuan, even before the contract. Through this, he felt that he should really turn into a mermaid after fusing. He had the power of the mermaid in his body. Qian Yu found that after he spoke to Black did not respond. Instead, he helped his teammates to avoid being charmed by the mermaid's voice. Qian Yu immediately raised his fishtail. Qian Yu's tail emitted a fishy and unclean mermaid power that made Lin Yuan feel like it was spreading to the bottom of the sea. Lin Yuan knew that Qian Yu was going to use the hidden sea muse's second ability, sea thorns. The myriad sea brambles had a very powerful function. It strengthened the submerged sea muse's control over the sea. The effects of the thorns, whether it was lifesteal, paralysis, poison, armor penetration, or sharpness. The black brambles that had already begun to grow in the sea turned into evil spirits of the sea. The control of the mermaid's song was extremely strong. Once he was pricked by these thorns, he would listen to the mermaid's song. He would probably be charmed in an instant. That was not all. Being stabbed was equivalent to being cursed by the mermaid. He had heard from his master, the Moon Empress, that the pressure between merpeople's bloodlines was stronger than that of fairies' source-type life forms. Those half-mermaids and ordinary fish could be easily used as slaves. These black thorns did not only wrap around him, but they also wrapped around Zhong Zhe, Lu Yifan, Lu Jia, and the others. With that in mind, Lin Yuan decided to merge with Bailan and test his strength against Qian Yu. Just as the black brambles were about to wrap around Lin Yuan's ankle, the black brambles suddenly stopped. Suddenly, the seductive mermaid's song in the sea suddenly stopped, as if someone had grabbed its throat. A majestic and dignified yet exceptionally ethereal singing voice rang out across the entire sea. Qian Yu's 8-star sacred source life form, hidden sea songstress, had produced a bluish-purple sea. But in an instant, with Lin Yuan as the center, the entire sea turned azure. Sunlight shone directly on the surface of the sea, forming mottled golden pillars of light under the sea. It gave rise to a sense of hierarchy in the azure seawater. At that moment, the pity god's body trembled. Her eyes were filled with disbelief, ecstasy, and intoxication. The expression lasted for a full 3 seconds before the compassionate god tried her best to hold it back. Zhongzhe, Lu Jia, and Lu Yifan were no longer affected by the seductive mermaid song. When they saw Lin Yuan in the sea, they all revealed a shocked expression. Unlike Zhongzhe, Lu Yifan, and Gao Feng, this was the first time Lu Jia had seen Lin Yuan in his mermaid form. However, Lu Jia discovered that Lin Yuan's mermaid form was completely different from before. Streams of water formed in this azure sea. These streams of water seemed to turn into logs that built palaces at the bottom of the sea. It was as if they were welcoming the arrival of a new emperor on behalf of the entire sea. Lin Yuan was also very surprised. Ever since Blue Lotus had blessed him, he had never fused with Bailan. Blue Lotus had once said that her blessing could purify the bloodline of any living creature in the sea. Lin Yuan could feel a strange power within his body that was constantly recovering and growing stronger. This power was transforming Lin Yuan's mermaid form. First, Lin Yuan's hair had grown longer, still the purest azure color. But the ends of his hair were like waves, plated with a layer of dazzling golden blue. This golden blue color was mainly blue, with gold as a supplement. The vast blue completely suppressed the luxurious gold. If Lin Yuan's hair had previously fallen to his calves, now, Lin Yuan's mermaid form stretched nearly 3 meters. It was so dazzling along with the current. Lin Yuan's facial features became softer, and a few blue scales glowed with rainbow light appeared on his face. The ends of his eyes were like 2 drops of tears. However, these 2 drops of tears did not soften Lin Yuan's aura. Instead, they set off a touch of nobility. The waves were like gauze, and layers of gauze scattered within 50 meters of Lin Yuan. A fish tail that people couldn't look away once they saw it stretched out of the gauze formed by the waves. The fish tail swayed, and this layer of gauze floated up with the current. Although Lin Yuan's fish tail was different from Qian Yu's fish tail, the difference was not very big. However, Lin Yuan's fish tail was the same color as the scales on his face. The scales on Qian Yu's fish tail had a trace of snake scales. The scales on Lin Yuan's fish tail were like petals of a sea epiphyllum. Every time the elegant and agile tail fin moved, it seemed to brush away a layer of lead from the entire sea. The bluish-gold color of the fish tail was the same as the tip of its hair, and the entire sea willingly submitted to this bluish-gold color. If the most beautiful thing in the sky was the moonlight, then Lin Yuan was the only beauty in the sea that corresponded to the moonlight. Lin Yuan raised his eyes and looked at Qian Yu. For some reason, Qian Yu felt that his bloodline was being suppressed by an extremely powerful force. The black thorns that grew from the bottom of the sea had long since withered. Qian Yu found that this sea that his sacred source life form, Qian Yu, had produced was no longer under his control. It was no longer under his control. However, this was not what Qian Yu was most afraid of. What Qian Yu feared the most was not whether he would lose this duel. He was afraid of Lin Yuan's bloodline itself. 7017K. Chapter 1773. Qian Yu had given it his all and used up all his trump cards. He had even used a sacred source life form to absorb the royal mermaid bloodline in the hidden sea songstress. It was not because Qian Yu felt that it was a matter of life or death. Instead, he wanted to use this achievement to exchange for a higher status and more resources when he returned to the Freedom Federation. Qian Yu had always had a plan. No matter what, even if he was crushed by his opponent, the goddess of compassion would not watch him die. If not for the fact that the goddess of compassion was worried about his safety, she would have personally come to Huiyao after receiving his information. Qian Yu was a smart person and could sense the goddess of compassion's attitude toward him. She did not dote on him like Na Na did on Luo. She was treating him well with a purpose. This made Qian Yu certain that the goddess of compassion was treating him well for a special purpose. At first, Qianyu did not know what that purpose was, but the goddess of compassion later requested that he only contract water-type phase. She also did her best to improve his sacred source life form, the hidden sea songstress. She had repeatedly emphasized the need to protect the royal mermaid bloodline in the hidden sea songstress. Qianyu suddenly realized something. The goddess of compassion had taken a liking to him since he had contracted the hidden sea songstress. In other words, the trace of mermaid bloodline in his body was useful to the goddess of compassion. That was why he was favored by the goddess of compassion. But now, Qianyu's confidence suddenly collapsed. Black also had the mermaid bloodline. Moreover, this mermaid bloodline did not come from a sacred source life form. This suppression from his bloodline made it impossible for Qianyu to use the submerged sea muse's ability, myriad sea thorns. To use the myriad sea thorns function, he needed to consume the mermaid power in his body. Due to the difference in bloodlines, mermaids with higher bloodlines had strong control over mermaids with lower bloodlines. When a mermaid with a higher bloodline released its mermaid power in the sea, it would cause the mermaids with lower bloodlines to lose their control over the sea. Sacred source life forms that relied on bloodline power to fight were often more powerful than other sacred source life forms of the same grade. However, they were very afraid of the suppression from a higher bloodline. Qianyu had been eating the benefits of the hidden sea songstress's sacred source life form. In the Freedom Federation, he had defeated many younger generation members who were stronger than him. He sat firmly in his position as the envoy of freedom. But now, Qianyu finally suffered a backlash. In terms of bloodline, Black was obviously more useful to the pity god than he was. Qianyu did not even dare to look at Lien deity's gaze. He was afraid that the pitiful goddess would treat him as an abandoned pawn. Before Lin Yuan fused with Bai Lan, he could not help but despise the mermaid Qianyu. However, now that Lin Yuan had also transformed into a mermaid, this kind of disdain turned into contempt after Lin Yuan fused with Bai Lan to become a mermaid. He even felt that Qianyu standing in front of him with this kind of attitude was a kind of arrogance that didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. This made Lin Yuan, who already despised Qianyu, feel a wave of anger. Lin Yuan raised his hand and stuck his fingers out of the gauze formed by the waves. He pointed at Qianyu from afar. A scorching current suddenly surged towards Qianyu. This scorching stream was merely Lin Yuan's normal ability, rushing stream, which he had used with the origin moving water. However, due to the power water soul, he had fused one of the 12 dark blue water pillars with the top-notch burning sea boiling water. It had obtained the scorching characteristic of the top-notch burning sea boiling water. The scorching referred to not only the temperature but also a certain evaporation ability, which could quickly dehydrate the target. It was extremely lethal to creatures with water in their bodies. This torrent containing the scorching characteristic meandered towards Qianyu. Qianyu originally had the ability to swing his fishtail and easily swim away to avoid this scorching sea torrent. However, the pressure of the bloodline made Qianyu tremble. Before the mermaid bloodline in Bai Lan's body evolved, the power of faith could be easily sensed by the outside world. But now that the mermaid bloodline in Lin Yuan's body had been enhanced, the power of faith would be blocked by the mermaid bloodline. At the same time, the mermaid bloodline would be enhanced when it absorbed the power of faith. The power of faith in Lin Yuan's shrine was constantly pouring into the mermaid bloodline in his body. This made the aura of Lin Yuan's mermaid bloodline stronger and stronger. The suppression of the bloodline made Qianyu unable to move at all. A scorching current rushed towards Qianyu. This scorching current, which was not much worse than the top-notch extraordinary flames, made Qianyu's body instantly bulge with dense blisters. The blisters burst, dyeing the seawater around Qianyu's body purple-red. The scales on the blue-purple fishtail also fell off under the scouring of the hot current. It made Qianyu look abnormally embarrassed. Originally, the mermaid Qianyu could not be compared with the mermaid Lin Yuan. Now the gap had become even bigger. It made Qianyu as small as dust in front of Lin Yuan. The star web had been in a complete uproar since Lin Yuan transformed. Mermaids themselves were a kind of beautiful creature. Both men and women were incomparably beautiful. The moment Qianyu transformed into a mermaid, the issue of position was eliminated. It had already amazed many star web netizens. However, when Lin Yuan transformed into a mermaid, those star web netizens who were amazed by Qianyu immediately saw the gap. Lu Shuang had been doing a simple commentary, but since Lin Yuan transformed, she had been in the live streaming room for more than a minute. She could not come back to her senses for a minute. The other star web netizens were not much better than Lu Shuang. Buddhist Black Rabbit, Tian Tian, Tian Tian. I've always been a straight man, but why can't I take my eyes off black now? What should I do? Mommy, I'm in love. Purple Star, you're not alone, and so am I. I strongly appeal to Master Spirit Craftsman to make Black's current image into a figurine. My name is Skyless, I don't know if I should change my name to Black or Lin Yuan now. I used to think that Black's Radiance 100 sequence title should be Silver Mask, Six-Winged Angel or something like that. Later, I voted for Silver Mask Miracle. But now I think Black's title must be related to mermaids. Wind blows, Black's mermaid image satisfies all my fantasies about mermaids. Compared to Black, Qianyu is simply a rag. Jadeite button, doesn't anyone care what method Black used to become a mermaid? We don't know how many tricks Black has up his sleeve. The Star Web's focus was basically on Lin Yuan's appearance. Firstly, it was because Lin Yuan's appearance was hard to not be infatuated with. Secondly, it was also because Lin Yuan had shown full suppression in the battle. It seemed that there was no suspense in this battle. 7017K. Chapter 1774. At this moment, everyone's eyes were on Lin Yuan. The pitiful goddess lowered her eyes. Her eyes moved quickly as if she was thinking about something extremely important. She seemed to be making a decision about something important. After a long time, the pity goddess raised her head. However, her brows were no longer furrowed. Instead, they were abnormally relaxed. Her eyes no longer fell on Qianyu. Instead, she looked at Lin Yuan in amazement. A strange emotion in her heart was constantly rising under the guidance of her bloodline. This emotion was extremely strange to the pity goddess. At the same time, it formed an invisible bond with Lin Yuan's aura. The pity goddess never thought that there was such a pure mermaid bloodline in this world. It had reached the level of the mermaid royal family. However, it would take a few months for the bloodline to stabilize. Otherwise, if she suffered a serious injury, it was very likely that her bloodline would fall. It would become the peak of the mermaid royal family's bloodline. At that time, it would be difficult for her bloodline to transform into the mermaid royal family's bloodline. Logically speaking, if she had encountered such a situation before, the pity goddess would have made up her mind without thinking. No matter what, she had to take Lin Yuan away by force. This behavior was in line with the pity goddess's usual thinking. Since he had his eyes on something, he had to keep it for himself. Otherwise, she would have stepped on the path to heaven and awakened her life providence in vain. But now, Lin Yuan's bloodline made the pity goddess dare not do such a thing. The pity goddess only wanted to solve her curse so that her strength could be improved again. However, the way to remove the curse was to obtain the mermaid royal family's love. It would be good if this young man did not hate her if she kidnapped him by force. How could he fall in love with her? Therefore, the pity goddess decided to do as she had previously thought. It seemed that before leaving the Radiance Federation, she had to have a good talk with the Moon Empress, the only two who had awakened her life providence. As for Qianyu. Who was Qianyu? The pity goddess had never heard of him. Lin Yuan, whose mermaid bloodline had transformed, could clearly feel his control over the sea. The feeling in the water seemed to make him more comfortable than on land. All the water elements were jumping and competing to communicate with Lin Yuan. Through the feedback of these water elements, even without using his eyes, he could sense any subtle changes in the entire sea region. The bluish-purple blood in Qianyu's body seemed like filth in this azure sea. They were swept away by the current and sank to the bottom of the sea. Qian Yu knew very well that as long as the mermaid blood in his body was suppressed by black, it would be difficult for him to even move. During this period, Qian Yu tried to activate the few mermaid royal bloodlines. However, the activation of the mermaid royal bloodline made Qian Yu feel that the suppression on his bloodline did not improve much. In the end, Qian Yu could only grit his teeth and undo the fusion with the sacred source life form, Hidden Sea Muse. The moment the fusion was broken, Qian Yu, who had been possessed by the medium devil, could move freely. Right now, Qian Yu had nothing else to rely on. That half-dead jellyfish Fei had been killed by Lin Yuan's manipulation of the water flow when he had transformed. Qian Yu had no choice but to summon his last contracted life form, which was a four-winged water-type fairy source-type life form. It was called the Vortex Demon Spirit. A petite fairy source-type life form with two pairs of fin-like wings appeared in the sea region. 5 huge vortexes appeared around Qian Yu's body. Qian Yu glanced at Lu Jia with joy. Qian Yu had not summoned his source-type life form, the Vortex Demon Spirit, because Lu Jia's insect queen was a 6-winged fairy. Fairies and mermaids were the same. The bloodline of the superior had an extremely strong suppression on the bloodline of the inferior. However, after fusing with the myriad insect emperor core, Lu Jia's insect queen had fallen asleep. The sleeping 6-winged fairy had lost the suppression on the 4-winged fairy's bloodline. His fairy source-type life form, the Vortex Demon Spirit, was at the pinnacle of Suzerain/Myth 2. It was one step away from evolving into a 6-winged fairy. Under such circumstances, he could still maintain a high-quality trump card. The 5 people from Radiance must be in despair. Through Qian Yu's observation, he found that Lu Yifan, Zhong Zhe, Lu Jia, and Gao Feng's expressions had indeed darkened. However, Black, who had transformed into a mermaid, had a faint smile on her face. This smile caused the 2 teardrop-like scales in her eyes to ripple with a moving luster in the seawater. This absolutely beautiful smile made Qian Yu's heart suddenly jump up. Just as Qian Yu was circulating his spiritual energy and preparing to summon the Fae, he thought Qian Yu was going to take out another shocking trump card. In fact, if it were a pinnacle of Myth 2 Fae, it would not be easy for him to deal with. He still had 2 sword skills that he had not used. One of them was the Whale Sea Leaping Wave Strike, which would greatly increase in power in the sea region. His Sacred Source life form was now a Class 4 Sacred Source life form, and his Princess mode and Sacred Sword mode had an additional function. However, the new function in Princess mode was still the same as Princess Dress. It could only play a supporting role. However, the price of using the second function in Sacred Sword mode was too great. Unless necessary, Lin Yuan was not willing to use it easily. However, if this pinnacle 4-winged fairy source-type life form was Qian Yu's final trump card, Lin Yuan felt that he should not need to use the second function in Sacred Sword mode. As a fairy source-type life form, Red Thorn's bloodline was at the pinnacle of 6-winged. Even if it stayed with the Insect Queen, which had just evolved into a 6-winged Insect Queen, when Red Thorn released its bloodline, the Insect Queen would tremble, and its strength would drop by 80%. Lin Yuan and Red Thorn's contract was rather special. It was a contract through blood. Red Thorn and Lin Yuan's bloodline were connected, so Lin Yuan could mobilize Red Thorn's pressure as a pinnacle 6-winged Fae. Lin Yuan lifted his fishtail in the sea region. He swam in the direction of the Vortex Demon Spirit. Due to the Blue Lotus's blessing, the Vortex Demon Spirit's attack would suddenly be absorbed by the flower bud before it could land on Lin Yuan. Therefore, the Vortex Demon Spirit's attacks did not cause any damage to Lin Yuan. 10 huge water pillars had protected Lu Jia, Lu Yifan, Gao Feng, Zhong Zhe, and the others in the sea region. Lu Yifan had recovered a certain amount of spiritual power and summoned the Yin-Yang 2 modes ox and the 4 symbols 8 trigrams goat. They each controlled their 2 fays and began to support Lin Yuan. After Qian Yu removed his mermaid state, he was worried about how to get close to Lin Yuan. After fusing with the demon, his body was extremely strong. Only in close combat would he be able to display his true strength. 7017K